Hello viewers, very good afternoon to one and all. As you are aware that we are all busy now in filing GSTR 2 and most of you have filed your GSTR 1 and 3B. So I'm sure that you are all aware of all the filing challenges which you have already faced and likely to come up. So today at ICAI we are doing this webcast to answer most of the unresolved issues which have been coming up and the likely challenges that are going to come up in filing GSTR 2. So with me we have Annapurna Shrikant. Thank you for joining us. So Annapurna would be handling GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B related unresolved issues. Then after the break we will be moving on to GSTR 2 related unresolved issues and what are the possible ways you can file the GSTR 2 and resolving them. So over to Annapurna for the first session.
Namaste and a very good afternoon to all the viewers who have been watching our webcast of ICAI. At the outset, I would like to thank the Indirect Access Committee of ICAI. This is my first live webcast for the opportunity given to me to render and deliver on this topic. As said, first we would be dwelling with this GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 related issues. Now before I take you further with the technical session, I would like to quote a small anecdote. Few days ago, we had heavy rains in Bengaluru and some southern parts of the country, wherein the roads literally turned into kind of rivers. In this context, I would like to share this anecdote wherein there was a recruiter and he was screening the candidates' resumes. Interestingly, he found one resume. He called that candidate for the interview. In that resume, that candidate had mentioned swimming as his skills instead of mentioning it as hobby. So quite amused by this inclusion, he asked the candidate as to why did he mention it as a skill rather than a hobby. For this, the candidate answered, "Sir, you never know when we get the heavy rains in Bangalore, and once such heavy rains comes, we know how it turned it into rivers. The roads turned into rivers. And because of that, I would have mentioned swimming as a skill because even despite the rains, I can swim across and reach the office." So, listening to this, the recruiter immediately said, "You are selected." It's been 115 days since GST regime has commenced. So, let's see, did we sail across, did we swim across, or what is the way ahead? And then how do we enrich ourselves and update ourselves as to, swim across with the things which comes along with us. Now, straight away, I'll take up the contents of the presentation. The overall synopsis would be, first, I would be taking up the common issues or errors in GSTR 3B. I'm sure while filing first return of July month, GSTR 3B, it looked a bit unfamiliar because we wanted to get used to that. But now as later, we also take up general tips. Friends, before I proceed further, one thing which we commonly try to do is, suppose we encounter any system error or some technical glitch, we immediately term it so. Oh, it's a system error which got encountered, or it's a technical glitch. Oh, this has no solution, I guess. So this is the general notion which we have, but we should have an open mindset to understand that not every system error is unresolved and not every technical glitch is unsolved. There are so many issues which have been already resolved and probably there is a small information gap because of which we may be struggling. So the intent of today's session is that let us try to address the issues which have been already resolved and which maybe we are stuck in between. So let's keep that open mind. First of all, if we come to the GSTR 3B returns, whatever we have filed, maybe we can classify the entire kind of an errors which has occurred into this possible 5 categories of errors. We are on slide 3, wherein the broad 5 categories of errors are: one would be the data entry errors, analytical errors, reporting errors, offsetting errors, and maybe the technical errors at the end. Now let us see what are these data entry errors. See, the session topic being this, I'm sure all of us would have had an overdose of concepts and conceptual understanding, or the seminars and workshops on more on the concept side. But this, we are making an attempt to address the ground level realities and also more practical case studies as to what are the issues and how to take them further. Coming back to the data entry errors. Some of these mistakes can be really expensive because it can have an impact of excess cash outflow. So it might affect our working capital also to a great extent. That's why we need to be extremely careful about filing the returns in a correct way. Let us see what could be the data entry errors. Wrong data entered. Let us say while filing GSTR 3B, the table 3.1 which talks about my liabilities, I was supposed to enter 5 lakh as taxable value. So the liability would have been, assuming it's an 18% category, 90,000 would have been the liability. But while presuming, instead of putting it under decimals, I included it towards the left side. So instead of entering 5 lakh rupees, I have entered 5 crore. Okay. So what is my liability? Instead of 90,000, I am liable to pay 90 lakhs. And assume further that is already been submitted. And once it is submitted, we cannot change it or edit it. This would be a pure data entry error, and I would be in a scenario wherein, can I pay 90 lakhs and file my return? Definitely no. So what is the way out in such scenarios? Similarly, there could be a possibility of transposition errors. Like, I was supposed to mention it as 45 lakhs, but it got entered as 54 lakhs. Again, there is an impact on my liability. Similarly, there should be some addition of digits. Or one more common error which happened during the first filings was, there is a column called reverse charge in the table 3.1. That is, inward supplies liable to reverse charge. But many people thought that it is input tax credit which needs to be entered in table 4. So they did the mistake of entering that input tax credit in the liability table. Now what happens? It's a double error. One thing is that I had to take it as ITC. Instead, that is added to my liability. What is the way out in such scenarios? If such an error had occurred, there would have been 2 possibilities. One thing is, I would have paid the additional taxes, whatever was applicable, and then filed my return. This is one possibility. The other possibility is, I have simply submitted my return and did nothing in the context of filing. Let us take this scenario wherein I have only submitted but not filed. In this circumstance, what can be done is, there is an option which they have enabled as to reset the submit option. So using this reset option, this is applicable as of now only for the July month return. So what I can do is, I can go back, edit the data which I have wrongly entered, all kind of data entry errors or whatever errors had happened during submission, I can correct them and then file a proper return with the reset option. This is one solution which is applicable. Now let us assume another scenario that I also submitted, I also paid additional taxes, and I also filed my return. Now any kind of errors that occurred in GSTR 3B can be rectified while filing GSTR 1, 2 and 3. which would be the final and superseding than what we filed in GSTR 3. So, taking that scenario further, now when I file my GSTR 1 and GSTR 2, that is, I have treated reverse charge under using the GSTR 2 return, thus my liability has reduced. Now what happens to the excess cash which I paid? Whatever I have discharged in cash, that will get adjusted to my cash ledger, and whatever I have discharged through ITC, that will credit to my electronic credit ledger, and whatever I file to GSTR 1 and 2 will be the final. So, this kind of an error, I would have an additional cash balance available in my ledger. Let us see how to take this additional cash balance also back to my bank account. Okay. The other kind of error which would have occurred most commonly, I think each office would have at least one such case, because most of the time when we fill a challan, if we look at the GST challan, even payment is a process, because there is a 4x5 challan matrix wherein I have to choose the column particularly under the very same head. If we choose it wrongly, then it will get reflected in the wrong cash ledger. Now, this kind of mistakes would have happened very commonly, because our staff or the article students would have done it, and by oversight, anybody for that matter, this would have occurred, and instead of discharging or paying to the IGST cash ledger, I paid it to CGST cash ledger. Now I do not have that liability in the coming months, or I know it will lead to a working capital crunch. Why should I leave it in the cash ledger as it is? So in such a scenario, one way out is, when you are filing GSTR 3 of July month, that is, the window will be open as per the available schedules. November 1st to 10th is the deadline for GSTR 3. So within that time, when we are filing GSTR 3, I want you to move to the slide number 7. Have a look at slide number 7, wherein I have given a screenshot of table 14 of GSTR 3. What is this table 14 of GSTR 3? This is like an automatic refund mechanism wherein I can, if at all there is any excess in the cash ledger, mind you, only cash ledger. So this automatic refund mechanism is applicable only if I have excess in the cash ledger. What I can do is, I can fill this table 14. Please focus on column 7, which says debit entry numbers. Let us say in the example which I quoted, I paid IGST instead of CGST. Okay. So I will have excess cash balance in my IGST cash ledger. I can do a entry of whatever excess amount is there in this column 7 towards the row integrated tax, and once I pass the debit entry and file my GSTR 3 return, whichever bank account I select from the drop down list in that table, that will get automatically credited to that bank account. So this could be one measure which we can think of when we have wrongly paid a challan amount as a wrong head instead of the right head. Okay. So now moving further, let us move on to analytical errors. This could be due to various reasons, like what could be the possible reasons for analytical errors? Suppose there were 100 invoices I had to take the totals of, like to arrive at my taxable value. But while compiling information, only 95 invoices were compiled. So there was a missing 5 invoices. So there is a mismatch. So now while filing GSTR 1, I need to rectify it. Similarly, in the initial stage, there was a lot of confusion as to how to execute this debit notes and credit notes, and what are the accounting credit notes, and what are the GST related debit notes and credit notes. All this lack of clarity was there, and people were kind of, okay, let us wait and see and then consider. This could be the reasons, one of the reasons why they had not considered debit notes and credit notes. But now, if you go and see in the GSTR 2 also, you can view some of the people have uploaded credit notes or debit notes. So, if you missed out considering those things, you can rectify them while filing your GSTR 1 and 2. The other errors could have been duplication errors. So, when I file my GSTR 3B, I do my working separately. So I compile everything, then a final figure I enter there. Maybe a possibility that I missed out certain, debit notes and credit notes, or I took the same debit notes and credit notes and invoices double times or more than once. All these kinds of errors are practically possible, very much. So if these errors are there, again in GSTR1, we can rectify all these things. One more very commonly done mistake is treating exports as nil rated or exempted instead of treating it as zero rated. Now, I want all of you to just focus a little bit on this point, because this can have a critical impact of claiming the refund in case of exporters. Suppose I do not fill in the shipping details which need to be provided in table 6, which is with respect to exports and related supplies, then I may miss out taking the refund of it, which can be a critical impact on my working capital again. And why should I miss a credit which I am legally entitled to claim? We should not make mistakes at these kinds of things. We should avoid that, and we should understand where to be properly classified and treat it as zero rated. So if at all we have done any mistake in GSTR 3B, taking it as exempted, let us rectify it in GSTR 1. Most of the times, in fact, in the GST regime, we have been listening to it that it is like almost preparing a monthly P&L account and uploading all the details pertaining to the P&L account, except a hand countable, a finger countable few items like the salaries, depreciation, certain reconciliation items. Except that we are going to upload everything. This is the general, common phenomena which we have been discussing. At the same time, fine, we will generally consider all the P&L items, but we must never miss out on considering some balance sheet items as well. I might have sold a car which was a business asset. That is also a supply in GST. Similarly, of course, purchases we might not exclude because it's a matter of input tax credit. But then, as a matter of control or a perspective, we should also always have a checklist with us to check on the balance sheet items as well. What could be the possible balance sheet items is, one important thing is advances received or advances adjusted of the whatever we received from the sundry debtors. We know that 13th of October has been we have received a lot number of notifications which have impact on so many aspects. Even one notification 40/2017 talks about advances related thing, but that kind of a relief is given only to the small and medium enterprises whose turnover during the previous year or tentatively during the current year is not going to exceed 1.5 crores. Only in those cases, that too from prospective basis, it needs to be considered. Otherwise, for all other cases, even we have to analyze advances also, and tax needs to be paid on that. Similarly, we should not miss out on the capital goods. There could be other possibilities of deferred revenue expenses wherein an expenditure would extend to more than a year. In such a case, we should consider even those scenarios to take them in the GSTR 1 and GSTR 2. To be more specific, in the GSTR 2. Now this is with respect to GSTR 1, and now we see what could be the analytical errors with respect to GSTR 2, which is mostly covering the inward supply related details. Now, although I mentioned in GSTR 3B in my liability table as to what was the liability about the reverse charge I had, I missed out mentioning it in table 4 under the reverse charge eligible credits. So this would have been a missed out credit in 3B. Similarly, there were some other registered vendors ITC which was which I could have availed, but I did not avail. So that could be a possible reason. See, most of us, like for example, bank charges. So banks have already uploaded, and whatever service charges they have collected and GST whatever collected, that credit they have given. Most of us would not have done that while filing the GSTR 3D. Nevertheless, we can consider all those ITC. Similarly, there could have been a possibility of excess ITC availment. I have considered excess credit. Probably I would have not received the goods till then, but still I considered it as credit when filing 3B. All these errors can be corrected now. Now, non-reversal of ineligible credits. this is, I would like to spend a couple of minutes on this point, because if you look at slide number 10, so there I have given you the table of GSTR 3B table 4. There we see 4AB ITC reversal, which is rule 42 and 43. This mainly talks about eligible and ineligible credits. If any credit is totally relatable to my exempt supply, or if any of the credits is totally relatable to non-business supply, then, or non-business purpose rather, then I am not eligible to take that credit. I might have certain other scenarios wherein I have a common credit, like that credit is used for both my taxable as well as exempt supply, both my business as well as non-business purpose. A classic example would be a vehicle maintenance, or a vehicle insurance, or a vehicle repairs for that matter, wherein I use it for both business as well as personal. Then it would come under a common credit. If I have the ITC for it, I should be taking the entire credit in all other ITC, then do the reversal, calculating D1, D2 and also the TE part, which is as depicted in rule 42 and rule 43. Friends, if we have missed out doing this, I think now while filing GSTR2, we must compute all these details and reverse back the credits so as to claim only those credits which are eligible. So again, another error could have been wrong classification of supplies. So I had to treat it as exempt supply, I treated it as taxable supply, or vice versa. Any errors which had happened during GSTR 3B can be resolved while filing GSTR 1 and 2, and that will be the finality. And whatever impact it will have, it could be an increase in liability or it could be a decrease in liability. Both will be passed as an adjustment entry by the system, and then that will be the final balance that will be available for us. Now, all these errors which we discussed till now will most of the times have an impact on my liability. But now I am taking you through certain errors which are purely reporting errors. It will not vary my liability or ITC as such, but it is a mistake of non-reporting. What are these reporting errors? 3.2 table 3.2 of GSTR 3B, we are required to report interstate outward supply B2C, that is end customers. This report we need to give state-wise. If we missed out giving that, anyways, we have GSTR 1, we can use that to make corrections. Similarly, if we go back to slide 10, we can also see, or maybe slide 12, there is a point which is called as 4AD, that is ineligible ITC, wherein section 17.5, this is one of the talked about sections in GST Act, which is about block credit or the restricted credits. This I am not eligible to take the credit. We call it as T3 credit. Similarly, as I discussed, those with respect to exempt supply and personal purpose or non-business purpose, those are also the T1 and T2 credits which I am not eligible. These I need to report in table 4 D1 and 2. If I missed out reporting in 3B, then I can use GSTR 2 to report the same. Now moving ahead to offsetting errors. What is this offsetting errors? How do we offset the credit? We are all aware of it. Section 49 talks about how to offset the credit, that is ITC available as per the electronic credit ledger. So the section 49, what it provides is IGST credit, it always has to be set off in the order of first to IGST, then to CGST, then to SGST. Similarly, CGST credit to be set off first to CGST and then to IGST. Similarly, SGST credit to be set off first to SGST and then to IGST. Can SGST and CGST be set off? The answer is no. Can I set off CGST, SGST of other state to say Karnataka CGST, SGST? That is also not permitted. Let us take up another scenario. I am a person, I purchase entirely within Karnataka, but I sell to Maharashtra. Okay, so wherein my credits would be in CGST and SGST, but my liability would be in IGST. Now how should I set off? Many people are having problems while offsetting errors, and they get the error because of this kind of a set off. This is a scenario where credits are in CGST, SGST, liability is in IGST. In such a scenario, first I should exhaust the entire CGST credit, then only move to SGST credit. If you first try setting it off in SGST and then CGST, you will definitely not get the offset done. So these are simple things which can ease our work, or that information gap can help us to smoothly file our GST returns. Now coming to the technical errors or the technical glitch, which is the most commonly used phrase, I would call it as a phrase. Just rewind ourselves for a few months before, wherein everybody got busy with the registration aspects of GST. The most commonly faced error was EM signer issues. So digital signature certificate, we were unable to sign with the digital signature certificate. An error called EM sign error popped up whenever we tried to do it. So what is the solution whenever we come across such cases? Even now many the people are facing this. We are day in day out helping people to solve such kinds of issues when are trying to file the GSTR returns using the digital signature. Now what are we supposed to do for this? I want you to go to slide number 15. Slide number 15 talks about EM signer issues, a 10-step solution. Now I will highlight only the important steps which is required. Let's assume most of us are using the Chrome. In the Chrome, we go to the settings, then again we go to advanced. There we have a tab called content settings. Inside that we have JavaScript and also a Flash. There I have mentioned in step 6, which I have mentioned about a URL. It starts with HTTPS 127.0.0.1.1585, which is the port number. We have to copy this URL to JavaScript, and also we have Flash in the content settings itself. We should copy these two URLs to both of it. Now after we copy this there, we also need to copy this and paste in a new tab. Okay, we open a new Chrome tab and then paste it, run it. Once we run this, we get the error message again. What is this? Your connection is not private. There you will have a tab called advanced in the down portion. Click on that tab. Now you will get a message that click on proceed to unsafe. You click on it and then try to file your returns with the digital signature. You will be definitely able to do it. We have tried it with n number of systems and it has happened, and we have heard from others also that this has worked for us. Now another issue is Tran1 related issue. Because of Tran1, I am stuck filing GSTR 3B. Okay. The process goes like this. Let's say I have submitted Tran1, but I am not able to file Tran1. Because I have not filed Tran1, okay, on submission I get the credit, no doubt. But if I do not file the Tran1, I will not be able to file GSTR 3B. Now July month GSTR 3B I have not filed, I cannot file August, and it goes on like a vicious circle. What should we do in such a scenario? Now there could be two possible reasons as to why I am not able to file the Tran1. One possible issue is we are not able to file Tran1 with EVC code, that is the electronic verification code. Try using a DSC. It has worked, it will work for you. Suppose this is not the issue. The digital signature is not the issue. The issue is I am getting an error message as processed with error. I want you to look at the slide number 17. Okay. And also then the slide number 18. Slide number 17, if you look at the circled portion, it says processed invoices. Very important while filing Tran1, once you save the invoices or various tables, whatever you have filled, just check on the top of the table whether you have received whether the tile heading has got updated to processed invoices. If you get this kind of a message displayed on that table, then you can be sure that there are no issues with this table and it has been properly saved. Now take the slide 18 where it is reflecting as pending invoices. Since we know that on submission we get the ITC, whatever is processed invoices, I get the ITC immediately even though I have not filed Tran 1. But whatever is pertaining to pending invoices, I will not get the ITC of it unless and until I file it. Now, if you look at the status there, it is showing as processed with error. Now, what is the possible reason for processed with error? One thing is, whenever we are filling in the tables mentioning our previous excise registration, it is very important to cross-check in our GST REG 06 or the registration certificate which we get whether we have mentioned our previous and earlier registrations pertaining to whatever credits we are claiming in Tran 1, whether those have been mentioned and submitted with the GST portal, because it will validate that registration number with what you are filing in Tran 1. Suppose you have missed out doing this. It is a non-core field amendment. Go to the non-core field amendment services in the portal, upload the details of your previous registration and submit it, and then try filing the Tran 1. Some other reasons could be, whenever you are mentioning your previous registration number, never use the special characters like slash, comma, hyphen, like all those things, because that could be one of the reasons for non-validation of your previous registration number. If at all you have done that, go and rectify that and then submit through a non-core field amendment. Few more things to be taken note of. There should not be any duplicate email or phone numbers used with respect to the promoters, partners or authorized signatory. This is one validation the system will do. And also there are certain mandatory fields which should never be left vacant, and STD codes always should be entered in the STD code field itself, not in the phone number field. These could be some of the possible errors which we had filed during registration, but now in Tran 1 validation it is taking as a processed error. You can make an attempt to make these corrections and resubmit the Tran 1 to enable you to proceed further. Now let us see the negative values. Okay, this I would call as a pure technical glitch. If you look at table 20, the slide number 22, there in the reverse charge section, you see that the central tax is showing a negative balance. How can a reverse charge have a negative balance under a specific tax head? Now of the same assessee, if we look at the 3.1 table, what has happened there is, it should have come under the other than reverse charge, but when we come to the payment table, it is coming under other than reverse charge. Since this is a pure technical glitch, we followed up with the help desk putting continuous mails and they rectified it in the back end. So these kinds of technical glitches probably have to be followed up. Always preserve a screenshot of this, email it so that you will have a documentary evidence in future that you encountered such issues, so that it is always insisted to have such documentary evidences with that, and also always post a mail to the help desk. Now let us move on from GSTR 3B to GSTR 1. So now GSTR 1, if we broadly classify the errors which could have occurred in GSTR 1, we may probably broadly classify it as processing errors, amendable errors and non-amendable errors. Okay. So processing errors. These could be due to data entry errors in the Excel template. We all are now accustomed to using the offline utility which is provided by the GST portal, wherein we use the Excel template, fill in the data exported from our software, then from there we upload to the offline utility, then from there we generate the JSON file, then get it online by uploading the JSON file. This we are used to it now. But then we might have been encountering certain issues even here. Let us see one by one. what are these processing errors? I have subclassified these errors as could be data entry errors in Excel template or could be JSON structure errors. With the GST returns coming in, we have started listening to a new type of a file called JSON. So this JSON has a specific structure format for its validation. If that structure is violated, we get the errors called processing errors. Now, while using the Excel template, few precautions we need to take. Although we might not have data, for example, CES, in many of the cases we might not have CES, but still we need to copy that cell as well, and we should not have any unfilled fields. This is one precaution which we need to take. Again, we have place of supply in the template. So this place of supply, let's say Karnataka, the state code needs to be mentioned because my software would not have the facility of recording the state code. It could be a possibility, I'm just telling you. So I might have exported from my software and then copied it to the Excel template which had a missing state code. So I should ensure that each state should always have a state code mentioned therein. Now if we have duplications, that needs to be removed. In Excel we have wonderful tools. One such tool is remove duplicates. It's always insisted to use this tool as a cross-check measure that once I export the outward supplies data into my Excel, I do this remove duplicates tool based on the invoice number, so that after that I can copy that to the Excel template. GSTN not valid. So we know that GSTN is a 15-digit number. Similarly, invoice should be less than or equal to 16 digits and there are restricted characters which needs to be used. Except 2 special characters, I am not supposed to use any other characters in invoice numbers. That is, one is a hyphen, the other is a forward slash. So I should ensure all these validations so that I can avoid the JSON structure errors or the processing errors can be avoided. I can use the features like length, which is an option in Excel to check as to whether my GSTN is 15 digits or whether my invoice is below 16. All these are the tools which can come handy to us while filing the GSTR 1. Similarly, decimal should always be within the 2 digits. If it is more than that, we are sure to get an error. Date. Our software might generate a date of month first and date next. Okay, but then the Excel template and the offline utility or the online portal for that matter will not accept the format other than DDMMYYYY. So, and one invoice, it has to be always one place of supply. So same invoice I cannot give multiple place of supplies. And HSN or description, we have a HSN table 12 summary which we are going to upload. That should never have the special characters. Suppose practically there is a possibility. I have 2 products, okay. One, the UQC is bags, the other UQC is kgs. But both fall under same HSN. Now for the same HSN, I can't have a repeat entry in the HSN table. So what should I do now? I should either convert kgs into bags or bags into kgs and have only one UQC and report accordingly. So these things has to be taken care of. Another possibility could be, let's say I have selected intrastate supply, but in tax I have entered it as IGST. Is it correct? No, it's not. So I should ensure that interstate, intrastate, the tax classification is also proper. Otherwise, we will not able to do it. Again, with respect to invoice dates, let's say I am filing the return of August month. I can very well have July month's invoices. Why? I might have missed it out. But then, can I have September month's invoices? Definitely no. So, this kind of date validation can also be done using the filters option in Excel. See, in slide number 26, I have given the error report, how it generates in a JSON file. We need to analyze this error report and then make the rectifications and then refile it. Now, amendable errors and non-amendable errors. If we analyze the GSTR1, we categorize the outward supply into various heads and we file it in the specific tables. So, most of the tables in GSTR1 can be amended in the succeeding month's returns. Okay? We all are aware that there is no revised return concept in GST. Do we have it? Definitely no. Then, do you think making a mistake is something a very grave error or a grave mistake? Making a small error is a grave mistake? No, errors are human. It is common. It very much happens. Then what is the way out? There is amendment option which is there, which is available for most of the tables, which I can give the amendments in the succeeding month. If we look at slide number 27, table 4, that is the B2B invoices. Table 5, reporting about B2C interstate greater than 2.5 lakhs. So this also I need to report invoice wise. Table 6, which we discussed in the earlier scenario, zero rated supplies or deemed exports and SEZ related exports related data we fill in it. Suppose there has been any mistake in any of these tables, we can always go and rectify it in the succeeding month using the table 9. Is it like I can amend only once? No, I can keep on amending to the till probably the September of the next month, till when I am eligible to take all these credits and all those things. Now coming to table 7, which is B2C other than reported in table 5. This can be amended through table 10 in the succeeding month's returns. Now table 9, we have a portion of reporting the original credit notes, debit notes and refund vouchers, plus if there are any mistakes pertaining to invoices or credit notes or debit notes or refund vouchers, all these amendments can be done using the table 9. Now table 11, advances and advances related adjustments. This whole table is for this. Similarly, if any mistakes occur in this table, these can be amended using the table 11 itself. Let us take up a scenario. Till now, what we discussed was how to make amendments or rectify the errors in the succeeding month. Now, let us say in the current month, I missed out uploading some 10 invoices. Now, what is the way out? Should I wait till the dates for August month return is notified and then make corrections? No, we have a way out. I think by now all of us would have tried viewing how the GSTR 2A looks and what to do about with this GSTR 2 and all those things. If we look at the GSTR 2A, we would already, those who have filed or even saved for that matter, saved and not submitted, those would get auto-populated in GSTR 2A. So if any of it is missed, we can ask the recipient to add those invoices, and once he adds or modifies the invoices, we will get to see it in our GSTR 1A, which we can accept it before filing GSTR 3. And once we accept GSTR 1A, our GSTR 1 for the current month itself gets amended to that extent. So this is one possibility of amending in the current month itself of what missed out invoices and those related issues. Now, another issue what we are facing is SEZ boxes. See, when I select an SEZ GSTIN and try to enter it in table 6, it will not accept if that GSTIN is not classified as SEZ. Suppose if they missed out mentioning, getting it through while registration, now what is the way out? I will have to mention it as a SEZ related supply. So, what can be done is, you should ask your recipient SEZ to send a mail to GSTN and ask them to flag their GST number as SEZ. Once they get that, you will be able to file your table 6 details properly. Now there is another section which talks about non-amendable errors. These are like, once we enter it, it gets freezed. Okay, we cannot rectify it. Let's see what are those errors. One is aggregate turnover for preceding financial year or the first quarter. We are aware that when filing GSTR 1, table 3 asks for this detail. So when it asks for this detail, I would have given it. Now, if we try to amend it during August month, it is not yet enabled. So, nil or exempted or non-GST outward supply, this is table 8. If any mistakes happened in reporting in exempted supply related details, then that is also a non-amendable error. Then table 12, we have HSN summary. There is no amendment possibility for this HSN summary. The mistake becomes a mistake forever. Documents issued during the tax period, table 13. This again is a non-amendable table. So all these 4 tables, once filed during this month, it gets freezed forever. Now let's see quickly as to certain do's and don'ts in GSTR 3B and 1. When we look at the written portal, let's say I want to file GSTR 3B. I log into the portal, I go to the specific month GSTR written. We get the tiles, that is all the tables I'll be able to view there. Those tiles summary, we have data inside, but sometimes the tile summary doesn't get reflected. So click on generate summary and allow a while so that it gets reflected on that. So it doesn't mean that data is not there because the tile summary is not updated. And once you generate a summary for this, for another 10 minutes, you cannot use the same option. So then cross-check the uploaded data with Excel sheet always as a recheck measure. So it is very important, at least the totals you cross-check it with what you have prepared, that same thing has got uploaded in your portal. Another issue which we might have faced is, let us say I issued an invoice for a wrong tax. I mean to say the product was, I have classified it as 18%. In fact, the product fell under 12%. For any whatsoever reason, I have issued this invoice. Now I want to issue a credit note. Can I issue a credit note only to the differential amount of the 6%? Is the 6% slab available? No. Then what is the practical way out? Then I have to issue a credit note for the entire 18% and then issue either a fresh invoice or a debit note depending on when you want to take the ITC. It is a call which you have to take. So it could be a debit note or a new invoice. Now, if I have more than 500 line items, it is always insisted to use the CSV facility, which is much quicker than copy paste option which we have in Excel. GSTR 1, the offline utility, table 8 and table 13, that is the exempted supplies and the documents which we upload, the various documents like outward supply, RCM invoices, the delivery challans, debit notes, credit notes, payment vouchers, receipt vouchers. We have a whole list of documents which we upload. So this feature or this option is not available in the offline utility. This we need to go to the online. There only we have to file the details. Now certain don'ts. Suppose I have not filed GSTR 3B of August month. Can I file September month GSTR 3B? Definitely no. The efforts to do that would be in vain. Now, I applied for registration in July month, but I got registration in August month. What should I do? Can I file the July month return? The effective date on the registration certificate, based on that, my return would be activated or enabled in the portal. Now, what I am supposed to do is, the data pertaining to July month return also should be included in the August month return while filing. We knew that till August 16, there was an option to opt to composition. But what would have been the effective date? Although I opted on say 15th of August for composition, but the effective date would date back to 1st of July. Then am I required to file GSTR 1 or 3B for July month for such dealer? No, not required. I am required to file GSTR 4 only because the effective date is 1st July. Now, many of us have been trying to save the data of GSTR 1 of August month, but we cannot submit it because the option is not yet enabled, and further the dates also, due dates also not notified. When we use a copy paste option of a sheet in an Excel utility, that say I do not have any other tables to fill in much, so I do everything online. But only table 4, that is the B2B invoices, I use the offline, the template part. So what I can do is, I can copy that specific sheet of B2B, but I should ensure that along with the headings I will copy it so that it gets smoothly copied to the offline utility. If I do not copy with the headings, then it will show an error. And never try to rename the sheet in the template. It will not allow you to do that. So do not use GSTR 4B of table 4B of GSTR 1 to fill the RCM liability. Now this is one thing which we must get clear with. What is GSTR 1? It is a return pertaining exclusively to outward supply. Now, am I required to report my liability with respect to inward supplies, that is RCM? No. That table should not be used for reporting the reverse charge liability for inward supplies. Few general tips. Whenever we encounter a technical glitch, it is always insisted to go to Chrome, open the Chrome, go to settings, again go to advanced, clear our browsing data. Okay. There, let us select this browsing history, cached images and files, and then cookies and other site data. Let us check this options and then clear the browsing data so that this technical glitch will be resolved. And whenever filing a nil return, let us preview and generate the summary, preview it and then file. Just because style summary shows nil, we should not be taken that let me file a nil return. Always use the preview option to cross check. See, once we fill all the tables of GSTR 3B, if we do a preview, we get to know what is the ITC, what is the liability. We can cross check with our computations to be doubly sure and then proceed to submit, because once we submit, we cannot edit the data. Always ensure that the offline tool, we use the latest version. Okay. One thing is we can check in the GST portal which is the latest available version. Now we have that zip file which we unzip, and then we have a file which discloses the version number of the utility which we have installed. So if we go to that, check our version. If it is always better to check that, uninstall it and reinstall the latest available version so that any updations would have been taken care. Now, are the TCS provisions in vogue? No, it has been deferred. So, what should I do if I deal through an e-commerce operator? I am supposed to reflect even that supplies under other than e-commerce operator till the time it is notified. Sometimes if you are unable to open the offline tool, we can use this localhost 3010. If we type this in the address bar of the Chrome, immediately the offline tool gets opened. In case of JSON errors, we cannot modify the particular field of error. See, I showed you in a slide wherein we were getting it is not a valid GSTIN. Can I only change that GSTIN and upload it? No. In such errors, I should delete the entire rows, re-enter the fresh data of the giving the complete invoice details. And also, in case of data uploaded to GSTR 1, let us say there is any modification or deletion, I get to know only after I upload it and it is visible in the online. In such a case, we can use the offline utility to make such changes and re-upload the updated JSON file, which we will replace the details in GSTR 1. Now, last part of this my session would be the late fee analysis. I know this has been a hue and cry all over that we are getting multiple possibilities of scenarios wherein late fee is getting auto-populated. What is this late fees and how is it getting auto-populated? Based on the information uploaded on the portal, no comments about the legal sanctity of it. I would refrain talking about that. But then, suppose, let us take up these 5 scenarios which I have mentioned in my 35th slide and then understand how is this late fee getting populated. Let's say for August month return I am filing. What is the due date? September 20th is the due date. I submitted on September 18th. I also filed on September 18th. No jhanjat of late fee. Let us take another scenario. I submitted on 18th. I filed on 20th. That is also within the due date. Again, no problem. But take a scenario. I submitted on 18th, but I filed on 23rd. So on 23rd September when I filed, there was no late fee which got populated. I was happy about it in fact. But now when we are trying to file the September month return in October, the late fee of the previous month is getting auto-populated. How is this happening? From the due date to actual date of filing, it is calculating and giving it. Take another scenario of I submitted on September 25th, I filed on September 25th. In such a case, August month return itself, it will show it as the late fee. Another scenario, the last scenario which has given is all submitted also late, and there has been a gap between submission as well as filed. So October 3rd I have submitted, October 10th I have filed. This part, the late fee would be proportionally day wise. First it would get populated during the August month return, and then between submission and file it would get populated for the September month return. Hope I have what efforts I've made in compiling the issues with respect to GSTR 3B and also GSTR 1 and the written related certain issues. It has been hopefully beneficial, and let's take a few questions with respect to this. Okay, we have a question by Naresh Chandra. How to cancel GST number, whether cancellation window is open. A cloth merchant opt for composition, whether he will have to pay tax on his stock as on 30th/6/2017. Okay, there are multiple questions here. First let us take one by one. How to cancel GST number, whether cancellation window is open. As of now, the cancellation window is not yet open, so we'll have to wait and watch. At the same time, we should not file the nil returns of in case we are wanting to opt for cancellation window, and also we should not even collect the GST. So a cloth merchant opt for composition, whether he will have to pay tax on his stock as on 30th/6. Okay, this question we need to analyze. This cloth merchant, whether he was a regular assessee in VAT or a composition assessee in VAT. Let us say he was a composition assessee going for composition, then no question of reversal. But on the other hand, if he was a regular assessee who claimed input tax credit filing is VAT 100, then definitely he'll have to reverse it using CMP 03. Once the 3B is uploaded on website, GST website, is it possible to make correction in the detail of GSTR 3B? 3B or any return for that matter, once filed is filed forever. Only we can make the corrections using GSTR 1, 2 and 3, which will be the final. If we have made any mistake, Shiva Agarwal, this question is by Shiva Agarwal. If we have made any mistake while filing GSTR 3B due to which liability is coming around 8 lakhs, which should have been around 80k, due to which we could not file GSTR 3B, how can we revise the form? I have already discussed this issue, but I would repeat quickly for you. July month, if you made this error, since the status was only submitted but not filed, there is an option for re-editing this G3B, which they have enabled, reset option. You can edit it, make changes, submit it, offset, making the actual payment and file the return. Tarun Sethi, we have a question from him. If someone has punched wrong figures in GSTR 3B and submitted it, then how can we revise, edit and rectify it? Simple, file proper figures in GSTR 1, 2 and 3. We have a question from Vela Yutham. How to view GSTR 3B? Okay. So there is an option called preview, or the what we have filed, the return. To view that return, they have enabled the option, but somehow it is not getting downloaded. Shortly we'll be able to get it. On the other hand, GSTR 1 and 2, we definitely have the option. But preview, yeah, we get the preview actually. If we download the preview, once we submit it, the preview will have a watermark as final. Through that, we can view the GSTR 3B. So P. Venkatachalam, in GSTR 3B for July 2017, wrongly entered the ITC in number 3 liable to reverse charge instead of number 5 all other ITC. How to rectify? This issue also I have discussed in detail during my presentation. Now rectify it in GSTR 1 and 2. Pavan Joshi, we have uploaded GSTR of one of our client by offline mode, but after some time error occurred. So you need to analyze as to what is the kind of error. What was that which led to this error? So analyzing that, you need to rectify that. It could be a JSON structure error, most of the time. So you can rectify that error, download the error file at the first instance. You get a JSON error download file, and then in the offline utility you have a specific section where you can open that JSON error file itself, open that, view it, and you will have the remarks as to what kind of error. Try to rectify those errors and re-upload it. We have one question from Mr. Umesh. I am having one query relating to GSTR 3B of September 17, seeking your guidance. Wrongly outward supplies are shown as within state supplies creating CGST. Okay. So this is an error which has changed my tax classification itself. I think for the time being you need to file it as CGST, SGST itself if you want to file it, so that you have to discharge the same liability, but make sure that once you get the GSTR 1 enablement for September month 1-2, there you make the corrections, then again pay the challan properly under that head, offset it, claim it in table 14 by passing a debit entry to what wrong payment which you had done. This could be possible. We have another question from P. Venkatachalam. In GSTR 3B 3.1 for July, the sales figure wrongly entered. How to correct it? All these data entry errors can be rectified in GSTR 1. One question from Ms. Shweta. What is meant by non-GST items and exempt items for GSTR 3B? If details of this item is not mentioned in GSTR 3B, then what will be the penalty? Okay. The first question is non-GST items. Okay. We have two sections where this word of non-GST items is used in GSTR 3B. One is 3.1 table, which talks about outward non-GST supply. Classic example would be our petrol, diesel, those things. Also alcohol for human consumption. This will come there. Similarly, if we come to table 5, we have non-GST inward supplies. Our fuel bills, and if at all, we had a party and for the office purpose there was an alcohol bill as well, that also would probably come under this head. And suppose we do not report it in, it would be a reporting error, probably a non-furnishment of all the proper details in the returns, and we will have to see what would be the applicable penalty for that. But to the extent possible, let us take care to avoid such mistakes and report all the possible values. We have one question from Haji Muhammad Mohsin. How to file the GST returns and how compute the composition schedule? I think the question is very incomplete and abrupt. I would skip that question. I'm sorry for that. So we have one question from Jagdish Godheja. In GSTR 1, my articled assistant has wrongly filed purchase data and submitted it. What is the remedy to rectify the error? Sir, one thing is you should catch hold of all those recipients to whom that data is filed, ask them to reject it, okay? And then all those correct recipients for whom the invoices needs to be updated, they should add it and you should accept it. These things should happen, and these whatever corrections get populated in GSTR 1A, you need to accept it so that it gets rectified in the same month. If that doesn't happen, you will have to make the amendments in the next month. One question from Mr. Ashish Singhal. Ma'am, from where to get the slides? I think it's hosted on the portal. You can have an IDTC, with the link you can get it. We have one question from Ms. Khushbu Bhattad. While filing GSTR 1, sales data being huge of B2B and B2C transactions, for some reason it is not being processed and it says processed with errors. We tried 4 to 5 times, but it says the same. Can you please elaborate with the definition of large taxpayer? Is GST applicable on sale of trucks? Okay, there are multiple questions. I'll answer one by one. First of all, whenever there is large data, never use a copy-paste option in Excel. Always use a CSV upload, which definitely will be possible. Now, the question is vague as to, you have just generally mentioned as processed with error. As I said, once it is done, you will always get an error report, JSON error report, or if any processing error has occurred, it will show up the reason as to what kind of an error has happened. You should analyze that, rectify it, and then re-upload it. Okay, try using a CSV option if you haven't tried, that might work for you. And also, what is this large taxpayer? Okay, so you're referring to B2C large transactions, which is covered under table 5. What is this B2C large is, let us say I am a supplier located in Maharashtra. I am making a supply to a recipient who is not a business. See, what is B2B? A person with registered number of GST. What is B2C? He might be a businessman, but he would be a small businessman and he would not have registered. So this confusion must be cleared. And any B2C transaction, that is with non-GST registered person, I am making an outward supply, say to Tamil Nadu, exceeding 2.5 lakhs. If within the same state I make a B2C 2.5 lakh, it should not come under table 5. Probably this could have been an error wherein you are trying to fill in the details of within the state also. So it might not be able to proceed further. So ensure that this table 5 is used for that. Now is GST applicable for sale of trucks? Okay. The context needs to be understood. If the sale of truck is the person itself is dealing with the sale of trucks, that would be his business. Definitely it would apply. Alternatively, if it is a business asset, most of the times trucks in the context I can understand this is a business asset. We should refer to Schedule 2 4A, which says that whenever there is disposal by way of the disposal, it would be whether or not for consideration. That is the words used there. Whenever business assets are moved or transferred or moved from the business, definitely GST would be applicable. So the CA, one more question from CA Anmesh Narvekar. Where to show outward supply under RCM in 3B? No column provided for that. Example, GAT sales under RCM.
We can take it.
Yeah, maybe we will take this question later. One question from Mr. Rajesh. In GSTR 3B of July month, mistakenly in the credit column availed credit of 8 lakhs instead of credit of 80,000. I had filed the 3B for that month by utilizing the credit of 80,000. When I should reverse it. As I keep on repeatedly saying, I'll just repeat once again for you. Whatever mistakes has happened in GSTR 3B, you can and have to rectify it while filing GSTR 1 and 2. That will be the finality that will supersede and override all your mistakes, and you can proceed with that. One question from Narendra Kumar, his question is, received rupees 40k, 5k GST as advance receipt but issued the receipt voucher in June 2017. Against the above receipt, we issued an invoice 40k, 5k GST. Whether I can issue invoice of 40k, 5k minus 45k is equal to 0 invoice. Okay, received rupees 40,000 and 5,000 GST as advance receipt, but issued the receipt voucher in June 2017. Okay, this would come under the transitional issues. I think this context needs to be understood. Which specific statute it pertains to. If it was service tax, then even on advance it was liable. If it was VAT, then the scenario would have been different. Taking that context, then if at all any tax was paid and the credit was taken, and now if at all you're charging GST, we have to consider the transitional provisions. I cannot give a straightforward answer in this case. We will have to reconsider this scenario, and this would be the last question which I would be taking for the day. When would the GST Tran shall be allowed to be revised in case of error in original return filed earlier? So if you have already filed the return earlier, October 31st is the due date for both filing the original Tran return, also revising the Tran return, and mind it that Tran can be revised only once. So with this, I would conclude my session, and probably we are going to have a short break now. After that, I would be eagerly waiting, and as everyone are waiting to listen for GSTR2, equally I am also waiting to listen from CA Venugopal Gella on the GSTR2. So we'll meet you after a short break.
Yeah, understanding various tables of GSTR2. So in today's session, we are going to look more about the offline utility of the GSTR2, the filing process of the GSTR2, and what are the various issues which most of the SSCs are facing while filing GSTR2. So looking at the objective of the session, we are going to look at various provisions and the relevant due dates and how to file the GSTR2, relevant offline utilities for 2A and 2, the filing issues, and what are the preventive measures. Now, people who are posting questions online, I request you, do not ask a question for the PPT. This PPT would be made available automatically from tomorrow. Right now, the PPT is available for view online, but the same will be uploaded by the IDTC website tomorrow. So I thank for the committee, Indirect Tax Committee, for taking the initiative in educating members and large, SSCs at large. So before we look at the details of the session, let's get the glimpse back of the various filing due dates. Now, the filing date right now, what we are looking at is for the GSTR 1, 2, 3 for the month of July. And July GSTR 1 we just completed, and the due date was 10th October. And GSTR 2, it is between 11th to 31st October. And GSTR 3 is up until November 10th. Now mind you, we are actually doing the filing for the month of July, and the next two slides, the two columns you are seeing for August and September. I'm not sure when the due dates are. If you see the site, it will be mentioned as to be updated. So for all the places, I may say that this is a blessing in disguise. Now why do I say that? In the normal cycle of GSTR2, it's a 5-day window. But right now, between 11 to 31st, we have a large window. And I already got in the previous session some of the questions where members are asking, will there be any extension for GSTR2? So imagine if GSTR2 itself is appearing challenge within this. So consider this is more like a training ground so that we are equipped for the coming months. Even if the due date of August return, say GSTR1, ideally it should have been on 10th September, but if this due date say is coming as 20th November, we are lagging behind 2+ months. Now if this has to be covered in the subsequent period, say up until December the 3B continues, so if this needs to be catched up by then, there are filing windows coming as shortened as every 5 days you would be filing returns. So we have to gear up ourselves in compiling the data, collating it, filing it, rectifying, and the unseen, which is GSTR3 and mismatch reports, that is going to be a huge challenge. So let's quickly understand the filing process overview. Now, generally, GSTR1 is what needs to be filed by 10th of every month. On 10th of every month, GSTR1 needs to be filed. Luckily, right now the window is extended. Of course, there are issues at the GSTN side and the SSC side. So by 10th, the GSTR1 gets filed. The data which is filed in GSTR1 is auto-populated under GSTR2A. Now, 2A is always recommended to be downloaded on 11th or after the filing window of the GSTR1, because all the suppliers have filed GSTR1 by then. Whatever which has been filed in 2A, you can get it into 2, and you have various options like accept, reject, modify. All those options are there, and in a normal course you got to file your GSTR2 by 15th of every month, which means there is a 5-day filing window between GSTR1 and GSTR2 to complete all these activities which we are currently doing for 20 days. Once the 2 is filed, if there are any modifications or new additions which are done in 2, this data gets reflected in the 1A of the supplier, and the supplier has a 2-day filing window, which is wherein he has to either accept or reject those modifications which has been made by the tax recipient. Once the 1A filing window is complete, you recalculate your tax liability based on adjustments, and after the 2 input credit adjustments, and you make the appropriate payment of taxes and file your 3 by offsetting your liability. This is your filing window in the normal course. Coming to month of July, you log into the portal you go to your returns dashboard, you will be seeing the window tiles something like this. So you have GSTR 1, 1A, 2, 2A and 3B. So very soon the other tile which is empty will get filled by 3. So today's session I am going to talk more about GSTR 2 and GSTR 2A. So let us first quickly understand GSTR 2A and move on to 2. Now if you see the 2A is called auto drafted details. Now this is available on a real-time basis. As and when a supplier is filing their GSTR 1 or adding a record in GSTR 1, this data is on a real-time basis populated in 2A. Consider like a debit credit entries in your accounting where you post one, it is automatically available in other place, subject to approvals kind of thing. So what kind of data comes under 2A? All the data which is filed in GSTR 1, GSTR 5, GSTR 6, GSTR 7 and 8. 1 is a regular return which you have already seen. 5 is non-resident taxpayers, ISD, the TDS and the TCS returns. So all this data gets filed auto-populated in 2A. So when you click on 2A, the auto-drafted details in 2A, you will be getting two options. One option for view, another option is for download. So let's understand what does this view and download means. So let's quickly move on to the view option of it. So when I go to 2A view, when I click on the button called 2A view, you will see something which is there like here as mentioned in slide number 8. It has 4 parts. Part A deals with the B2B invoices, credit notes, debit notes, amendments to the B2B invoice and amendments to the credit notes and debit notes. Part B is on ISD credits, Part C is on TDS and Part D is on TCS credits. Now, wherever the respective SSCs are filing their returns, the respective data is uploaded into various parts of GSTR 2A. You will see an yellow mark pointing to B2B invoices. I will explain you one tile. The same thing is available in all other tiles. So when we click on B2B invoices, which is slide number 9, you will see the details of all the purchases which you have made, all the inward supplies which you have had filed by the suppliers. Now this is a classic case. I have given you the example of some sample 6 invoices when you log in. You will see one of the line item marked in red color and you can see the counterparty submission status as no. So in the API language it is called as CFS, counterparty filing status. So if the CFS is marked as a no, which means the supplier has uploaded the details to GSTR 1, but has not filed their GSTR 1. They have not submitted their GSTR 1. So even those SSCs who have submitted but not filed will also be marked as yes. Those SSCs where they have uploaded details to GSTR 1 but have not submitted their GSTR 1, those details are shown in the counterparty GSTR 2A as no. So there is a difference between this yes and no, even in the way you can use it, how we can process this record. So it is very much required for you to understand if the marking status as yes, what are the choices you have? If the marking status as no, what are the choices you have? Generally, in any filing window, it will only be showing 5 records, and you have the right down scroll button where you can move on further to various places. Moving on to the next option, which is GSTR 2A download. So we are on slide number 10. Now, when I say 2A download, so we have seen the view part. when you click on the button called download, it allows you to download the data. So it will take you to a section where download data for GSTR 2A, and you have a button called generate file. Every time when you log in, you will be seeing this. Now, most of the times the user clicks this generate file, and there is always a time gap to generate the file, and they think the file gets emailed or gets saved somewhere. But actually when you click on generate file, you will get on the top of the screen a message stating come back after 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Generally they have a buffer of 20 minutes to process the request. When you come back to this section, again you are not going to see the file. You got to click on this button called generate file again. Once you click on the generate file again, you are seeing the down portion, a yellow mark which is saying click here to download the file. Now if you see, it is stated as file 1. Now why does it is stated as file 1? Because if there are large databases, if the JSON file is more than 1 MB, more than 5 MB, it splits into multiple files and you have to download the multiple files. If you think that you have generated file at an earlier date, you want to generate it again, now when you click on generate file, even after seeing this download button, now the system gives the process for generating the request. And every time when you click on the generate file, it will show what is the date on which the file has been generated. That timestamp would be made available. So once you click on this, click here to download file, how do you see the JSON file? So you have been given the offline utility, so most of you are familiar with it. Right now the version of the offline utility is 2.0. If you are still using the older version 1.0 or 1.1, please download the latest utility, because the version 2 is compatible for filing GSTR 2. Now when you open the JSON utility, you have two options. One is new, the other one is open. New is for creating a new records, be it GSTR 1 or GSTR 2. Open, to open any existing JSON file. It could be any GSTR 1, 2 or any JSON file. You can open it through open. Now when you click on the open button and browse through the file which you have downloaded, and when you load it, you will see it, you will log into a summary page which is there in the down section, where you are seeing B2B invoices 4A, and it will show the number of invoices, the amount of tax, CGST, SGST and IGST. You can click on this blue button, that B2B invoices, to see further. You will be able to see that the invoices are given in a detailed way with the gist in invoice number, invoice date, invoice value, place of supply, and further details of the invoice is mentioned. Mind you, this is a detailed view of JSON. Here you are not going to take any action. In the previous session, there were a couple of questions which I have received as, this JSON is a file I cannot understand. By the way, you open it, even you will not be able to understand. It is a file format, like when you're filing income tax XML, when you open the XML, it has lot of data, but somewhere meaningful, somewhere you cannot read it in a human way. JSON is something like that. Now, how do I convert this JSON to an Excel? Right now, the department offline utility which has been given has not been provided an ability to convert to Excel. Maybe very soon they may give that option. However, I can give you two ways of converting the JSON data or the 2A data to an Excel. So you are able to see here on slide number 13, where the copy paste option which is available on the screen. On the screen of the 2A, when you give the 2A view option, you can select each page by page, the 5 records which are coming up. You can copy it and paste it to Excel. If someone is dealing with say 50 purchases, so he just need to browse through 10 pages and he can copy paste it into an Excel and match with books of accounts. But there could be a situation where you have large amount of purchases which you are doing. Now mind you, when you are doing a copy paste on the screen, you are copying at party level, you are not copying at invoice level. If you have to copy at invoice level, again you have to drill down to the party, you will be able to get it at invoice level. The other option of converting, there are a lot of ASPs, the application service providers, who are into the business of GST software returns, or there are online JSON converters where you can submit a JSON file. You can just do a Google search, convert JSON to Excel. You will find many online free versions. Mind you, there are a lot of issues with the free versions because they will not get processed with the header properly. Most recommended approach would be those ASPs who are preparing GST software. Those JSON converters, they get converted very neatly into an Excel. There are paid versions, free versions, cloud, desktop applications. So you can use any of them and convert to the Excel. So with this, we conclude understanding GSTR 2A and move on to GSTR 2 inward return. Now GSTR 2, the inward return, that is the hot topic of the day. Most of the information is auto-populated, and most of the speeches which we heard from the department officials, and the way they have explained is the SSCs have to file only one return and monthly one return, and they say maybe the efforts they would have is file GSTR 1 and GSTR 2 is auto-populated, you need not do anything, and GSTR 3 is completely auto-populated, it is just making payment of taxes. My personal view, GSTR 2 requires more time and attention than your GSTR 1, because GSTR 1 is your sales data which is organized and you can submit it. GSTR 2, though you are not uploading the data, but you have the onus of downloading it, reconciling with your books of accounts, matching it invoice wise, and there is activities that needs to be done after matching, which is even more challenging than just by matching it. So we will understand all these challenges one by one. So moving on to basics of GSTR 2. Now GSTR 2 is an auto-populated data. Most of the information comes from the GSTR 1 where the supplier has filed, and the recipient taxpayer has to accept those records, reject them, modify them, or keep it pending. If they choose to pending, keep it pending, or if there are any missing records, they can add it. However, these actions, whatever which I have mentioned on GSTR 2, where the recipient taxpayer takes action, he cannot do it after September of the next financial year or filing of the annual return, whichever is earlier. Some more things which you should know is, wherever there are changes which are done in GSTR 2, these modifications would get communicated back to the supplier in GSTR 1A. Again, the supplier has this actions of accepting or rejecting them, and there is a 2-day filing window which is always immediately after the GSTR 2. Wherever the changes which have been accepted by the supplier, these changes are deemed as if the GSTR 1 is corrected, and the liability to pay the tax is accordingly adjusted. If any invoice is is amended downward, the liability comes down. If any addition is accepted, liability goes up. Now in GSTR 2, the recipient taxpayer has to classify these purchases as whether they are eligible for input tax credit, and if they are eligible, whether they are eligible as input goods, input services, or capital goods. How are they eligible? That needs to be marked it. And when we say eligible, when you go to the credit rules, what we are talking about is T4 and C2. They also need to mark it as ineligible if they feel these credits are not eligible, which is T1, T2 and T3 for availing the credit. Some other points for you to note on GSTR 2 is, this is not applicable if you are an input service distributor. If you are a composition taxpayer, if you are a non-resident taxpayer or a taxpayer filing returns under Section 51 TDS and NC 52 TCS returns. So these SSCs are not filing GSTR2. That's one thing you have to make a note. Next point, the filing window for the GSTR2 is always after GSTR1 filing is complete. Even you are ready with your data, you cannot straight away file your GSTR2 immediately after the tax period, because the filing window for GSTR1 has to be closed. Only then GSTR2 you can either take action adding new records or submitting or filing it. Couple of things you should be checking before you file your GSTR2. So what are the things to check before filing GSTR2 is the receiver taxpayer should be a registered normal dealer. I said couple of people cannot file GSTR2, so you got to check whether they are a normal dealer. Like a composition dealer, this window will not be open. In fact, there has been a lot of confusion on which return to be filed for whom, and sometimes people send a query, in my login I am not able to see this window. However, someone is saying the due date, for me there is a due date to file within 31st October. If not, there is a penalty would be levied. So it is critical you should know for whom it is applicable, and your GSTIN should also be active. There are a lot of migrated cases where the GSTIN has been cancelled. In case if your GSTIN is cancelled and it is surrendered in any case, in those cases you cannot file your GSTR2. Ensure you have proper login credentials. Most of the times when the password is changed, periodically the password gets changed every 90 days. Most of you would have reset your passwords very recently, so ensure you have a proper user ID password. Then the signing the file. Generally, of late, if you see the last 2 months, whatever the filing dates which we have come, on the nth day it was a holiday, and the system was also slow, and you could finally complete your submit offset liability, and by the time the activity is done, it was somewhere 8 o'clock in the evening, and you are now ready to file and start finding for a digital signature, and the authorized signatory either is back home, is on vacation, not in the office. The various challenges pushing you to file the return just a day after the due date because of the last technical glitches. And DSE is mandatory for the company, corporates, LLPs and the foreign LLPs. In case if you are opting for e-sign instead of a digital signature, ensure the authorized signatory who has been added has a valid Aadhaar number with a mobile number updated, because currently the e-sign is done using Aadhaar and the mobile OTPs. Those SSCs who are opting for e-verification, you also got to ensure the mobile number which is indicated at the time of registration is active and you are receiving it. Thankfully, you will get the OTPs of the e-verification on the mobile and the email ID. And again, quickly check your GSTR1 filing window is lapsed. Some other steps you have to take care before filing is clear off your cache memory from the browser. So press Ctrl+Shift+Delete or Ctrl+5, clear off them, and decide whether you want to file the GSTR2 in an online mode or an offline mode. Don't worry, I'm going to explain in a while what is this. And download your GSTR2A from the common portal after the GSTR1 filing window is completed. So that is one set of data. So you have downloaded the GSTR2A and convert it into Excel, which is one set of data. Download all your purchase registers for purchase data from your books of accounts and keep it in one place. So that is called data B. So once you compare this is when you will start proceeding what to file under GSTR2. It appears to be simple, but you got to do very very planned way. Otherwise, it will take lot of time. So let's understand the table view of GSTR2. Okay, I am going to explain the GSTR tables in detail at a later point, because I would be from now on I would be using various table numbers. So it is very important you understand the table numbers. GSTR2 has 13 tables. So The most easiest table which I need not explain is table 1 and table 2. It's auto-populated, your GSTN ID and your name. So let's understand the important tables on the GSTR 2. So table, what is right now, what you are seeing on the screen is a summarized portion of the tax reported data. I have segregated inward supplies into various categories. So taxable registered purchases from the B2B, taxable purchases purchased from an unregistered dealers, the third one import of goods, in the last column all other purchases. So your registered purchases are categorized into two categories: purchases made from a registered person. When I say registered purchases, categorized into two categories. Either it is a forward charge or a reverse charge. In a forward charge, the supplier has collected the taxes from you and remitted to the government. In a reverse charge case, the supplier has just provided the services or the goods and expecting you to take care of the tax liabilities. Forward charges to be reported in table 3. Reverse charge, purchases from a registered person, to be reported in table 4A. All unregistered purchases, taxable purchases from an unregistered vendors, which is 9.4, 9 subsection 4 or 5 subsection 4, has to be reported in table 4B and 4C. So 4B talks about all the domestic purchases from an unregistered vendor, domestic taxable purchases. Mind you, I am using the word, stressing on the word called taxable. Taxable purchases to be reported under table 4B. If it is importation of services, it has to be reported under table 4C. And if it is pertaining to importation of goods, goods gets reported under table 5. Now table 5 has two subtables. If it is direct imports, it goes to table 5A. If there are imports from SEZ, it gets reported under table 5B. For a moment I am skipping table 6, I will come back. Table 7 talks about all other inward purchases. What could be other inward purchases is taxable purchases from a composition dealer. We have looked at taxable from a registered dealer, forward charge, reverse charge. So this is a case of taxable purchases on a composition dealer. You are not getting an input tax credit. We have seen taxable purchases from an unregistered dealer. So table 7 talks about non-taxable purchases from an unregistered dealer and a registered dealer also. So table 7, you would be reporting composition purchases, exempted supply, nil rated, non-GST supplies. Now these are a very critical tables under GSTR 2 which everyone should know. Table 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. 6 I said I'll tell you in a while. Look at this slide. It will give you what does the other data which is there. Table 6 talks about amendments to table 3, 4 and 5. 3 was a forward charge taxable registered purchases. Table 4 was all taxable unregistered purchases and reverse charge liabilities. Table 5 was importation of goods. So in any of these cases you are making some amendments or adjustments, including credit notes, debit notes. These data gets reported under table 6. Table 7 is composition, which we have seen other non-taxable nil rated purchases. Table 8 talks about input service distributor credits. Table 9 is TDS and TCS credits. Table 10 is whenever there is a tax liability on advances which you are making payments to an unregistered vendors, which is payment vouchers. So advance liability on time, so base of time of supply for unregistered purchases. So table 10, whenever you are making a payment and whenever you are booking the purchase, you will reverse it. Both liability and reversals are reported under table 10. Table 11 is adjustment of your input tax credit. So there are various rules of common credit, those adjustments. Table 12 you will be seeing as missing here. Even if you see online, table 12 is missing, but table 12 is GST and auto populated adjustments owing to provisional credit mismatch, various mismatches. which I'll briefly touch upon at in the last. Last table, table 13, is HSN wise summary. So these are the various tables of GSTR2. Now in the previous session, we have dealt each of the table in length to understand what to be reported in each table. In this session, we are now going to look at what are the practical issues that are going to come up while filing it. We will begin with understanding the filing process. GSTR2 filing process has two options: prepare online, prepare offline. Now same like 2A had the view and the download option. So here you will have prepare online and prepare offline option. So let me explain you what is this prepare online and prepare offline. When you choose to file your GSTR2 prepare online, you want to log into the GSTN portal, take all those actions then and there, whether if your data is small, you want to take actions then and there. You will be filing the data online on the GSTN portal. So that is called prepare online. Now in a prepare online situation, you log into the portal, a detailed data entry is available in the portal. You will be seeing various tiles. That data is, you click on the data and you will take action. Most of you, when you logged into GSTR2 and clicked off any on the tiles, you might not be seeing any data. To fetch the data from 2A, so as I said in the beginning, you got to choose whether you want to file the return in online mode or in an offline mode. If you are filing the data in an online mode, you have to click on the button called Generate GSTR2 Summary. When you click on Generate GSTR2 Summary, whatever the data which is available in the GSTR2A, which is offline mode, gets fetched into the GSTR2. Now it is available for you to process online. I will take you the online mode. What does offline mean? This JSON utility which you have downloaded from the portal in the 2A, you go to the JSON utility or a third party utility, you start creating generate GSTR2 JSON. You take all those actions which you are otherwise doing in online. After you are complete with the all the activities, you have a button called generate JSON. You will be generating the JSON. You will go back to the portal and upload. Most of us have done the same thing for GSTR1, which are the both online data entry or an offline process. So let's begin with understanding prepare online. Now prepare online is divided into two sections: invoice details and other details. So all those 13 tables of GSTR2 is divided into two sections, which is invoice details and other details. So when you log into the portal, you will see the tiles which I am saying is this. You will be seeing tiles like this. So 3 and 4A is clubbed together because they are purchases made from a registered taxable person. So and they are taxable purchases, maybe forward charge or reverse charge. Table 5 was talking about import of goods. 4C was import of services and 4B was unregistered purchases. Any amendments to any of these details was reported under table 6. So these are the invoice related details. What are the other details prepare online is your table 7, all your non-input credit purchases are reported. So composition nil rated, non-GST, exempted supplies. Even your liability adjustments of payment vouchers and purchase booking. So all those data is reported, HSN summary, and table 11 is manual adjustment of the input tax credit which you would be doing it. Down of this slide you can see this button called generate GSTR2 summary. Only when you click this button the details will be fetched from 2A to 2, and generally system will take a process time to fetch these details. Let's understand prepare offline. When you choose to go, so in the GST, when you log into the dashboard of 2, you will see this both prepare online and prepare offline. So when you click on this prepare offline, it will take you to this section. You will be again seeing two tabs. One is upload, the another one is download. So when it is said as prepare offline, You have processed the entire GSTR2 offline somewhere. You are generating the summary and uploading the data here. So you go to the offline upload mode and you have the data invoice upload. So where you can browse and upload the data. Now, couple of things which you have to note is, in case if there is any error in your JSON file which you have uploaded, an error file will be created on the online portal. Now, the error file will be created only for those records which have errors. So do not try to compare an error file with the original GSTR2, because error file is only looking at those invoices which have error. In a while I will explain you why those invoices would have error, what are the possible reasons. We will be going to go through that. Now that error file which is generated, how do you access? Again, it is something not human readable data. You go back to your JSON offline utility. The third tab in your offline utility is open error file. You select that utility, select the downloaded error file. You can verify the error file. Now, once you see those error file, you can make all the suitable corrections back in your GSTR2 JSON, the original file. You make all the necessary corrections. Again, generate JSON file. Go back to the portal and do the same activity of invoice upload. Clear? So this is invoice upload. Moving on to slide 29. What is this download? Now, download, we have already seen a download under 2A. Now the same download is also again available under GSTR2. So under GSTR2, you have download of the data for GSTR2. You click on the generate button. Once you click that, if the download is already generated, that data is shown immediately here. Click here to download the file. As I said, every time when you see it, it will show file 1. So if your JSON file is large in size and the file size is more than 5 MB, every file will be created after 5 MB, it will create the next file. You can download this JSON file by clicking on the link, and once it is appeared, you can start processing this data in the offline utility. So this is a download offline. So a certain information for you to note is, if the number of records are more than 500, this cannot be processed, viewed online. You still have to again go back to an offline mode. And the offline mode, the utility I have explained you how to access the offline mode. If the GSTR2 is completed, in the earlier section also someone was asking how do I see the details. So you will have a preview button both for 3B, GSTR1, GSTR2. For every return you have a preview button, where once you click on the preview button, you will be able to see the summary of entire GSTR2 whatever is filed. Unless GSTR2 is submitted, you will see till it is submitted, you will see this preview in the draft mode. So let us get into the reconciliation differences of GSTR2. Now I'm sure every one of you have got a broad view of what is there in GSTR2 and what is the broader overall process of filing the GSTR2. Let's get into the detailed nitty-gritties of the GSTR2. Now, firstly, your 2A is converted into Excel in any of the modes, manual copying or using a third-party utility. You have brought data into an Excel. You also have books of accounts data brought into an Excel. In fact, most of the books of accounts, like people who are using Tally is one predominant software which is being used. Tally has released the 6.2 version, right? Even 6.1.1, you have the option where you can start comparing and marking the status. So 6.2 version of the Tally will allow you to download the JSON directly from the department utility, load it into the Tally, do the auto reconciliations and give you the report. So that is one of the good tool which I would always say that you should do. Try matching with your books of accounts, and be it any software, they have the same facility to reconcile books versus GSTR2. Now, When you start doing this reconciliation process of books versus this, you will see the records into various categories. I have listed the various categories that could be possible for you. The first happy scenario is the records which are available in GSTR 2A fully matched with the records which are available in the books and in the same tax period. So it will always be matching, but it is also important that it should be in the same tax period. Now, wherever the records which are available and matching in the same tax period, you will be marking them as accepted. Second scenario, records are fully matched, but they are in your books of accounts, they are in a different tax period. For example, on 30th of July, someone has sent the goods, the invoices were sent on 30th July. By the time when you receive the material, it was of 2nd August. You have recorded in your books of accounts on 2nd August. So it is pertaining into subsequent tax period. In those cases, you will be marking those items as pending. So I'm explaining you from the first slide of what are the various actions which are available. Those actions, how do we classify? I'm explaining you. I'll also explain you the impact of those. The next category is you have records in your books of accounts, but you are not finding them in your GSTR 2A, which means the supplier has not uploaded the sales data, but you have the data in your records. So these records are missing. So any missing records, you can add them manually. The next category, there are records which are available in 2A but not available in your books of accounts. It could be very much practically possible. Purchases have been made, but it has been not approved. The invoices might be lying at the stores or admin various places. It hasn't been recorded as an expense, or the supplier on the other side by mistake has chosen a wrong justin. It could be any of the scenarios. We'll get into the nitty-gritties, but right now the scenario is it is recorded in 2A, which is available. You are not finding in your books. The last scenario, which is a very tricky, which needs a fuzzy logic to say that yes, it falls into this scenario, is they are partly matched, meaning my data is matching, maybe the invoice number is a little different. Like I have recorded it as 001, the other side is recorded as 1, or the invoice date is different, or the taxable value I have rounded off and recorded, the other side is written at the prices. It could be any of this. Lastly, even the place of supply, I have recorded place of supply as mine, but they have recorded at different place of supply. So these are the various categories of the comparison between books of accounts and the GSTR 2A. Your data gets split. Now let's look at the action points. So these data, which is split into various categories, what is your action point? Now we have seen in the previous slide, when would you do accept, add, missing, pending, all those things. When you take those action, each of those action, what is the impact of it? Let's look at it. Now the first action is accept invoice. Now when I move to accept invoice scenario, it's a happy scenario. I have accepted all those purchases, so it gets added to my input tax credit. The liability of the supplier is also intact. There could be another accept where I have made some modifications. Data is appearing in 1A of the supplier. Supplier also has accepted it so that the records of the both end is matching. So when a supplier is accepting 1A, his liability would also go up accordingly. And I've used the tax period called M. So whenever is the filing window, the tax period gets completed. After that, this data gets updated. A note for you all, it is not possible to modify or reject or delete an invoice once it is accepted. So if it is accepted and filed, you cannot again go back and reject or modify that invoice. Let's look at the status 2, rejected invoice. So what happens if I reject an invoice? Whenever I reject an invoice, it gets updated in the GSTR 1A of the supplier as rejected invoice. So I have rejected invoice. So a data has come in the 2A. I did not find it in my books of accounts. I rejected it. Once I rejected it, it goes back to 1A of the supplier stating someone has rejected your invoice. Now there are two options available for the supplier. Supplier can accept such rejection or supplier can reject that rejection. If a supplier accepts the rejection, it would reduce his output tax liability because his sales is also correspondingly reduced, so the output tax liability comes down. If the rejection is opted, so invoice gets removed from the recipient as an input tax credit, it moved out because they rejected. However, it gets the liability of the supplier continues same status quo because I have rejected the other person's rejection, so I am holding my point of view. Again, you cannot revise your action of this rejection post you submit your GSTR2. This note is always important. Please read the notes of each impact because I'm sure these questions would come up again in the next webcast saying that by mistake something has happened, how do I amend it? So I will come to the amendment, but once you submit you can do nothing. Now let's move on to the next option called modify invoice. Now modify invoice, when you choose this action called modify invoice, what would be the impact of it? Firstly, let's look at what you can modify, what you cannot modify. As a recipient taxpayer, I cannot modify the supplier's GSTN ID, the supplier's name, invoice number, invoice date, place of supply, or the supply type or the invoice type. These data cannot be modified. What can be modified is the transaction data of the taxable value, invoice value, or eligible ITC, or the amount of ITC which is available. Only these data can be modified. Now if I make this modification of editable fields, what would happen? Whenever I do a modification of this editable fields, this would be appearing in GSTR 1A, again back to the supplier for taking them action. Now wherever the supply discrepancy is because of some modifications and this is also been rejected by this supplier. So I made a modification, supplier has rejected it. Again, let's take both the happy scenario, supplier accepted it, it again moves, adjusts the liability, matches my input tax credit, no issue. Supplier has rejected it. So what happens when supplier rejects it? I have an input tax credit claim which is different from output liability accepted by the supplier. So both are different. Whenever both the data is different, a mismatch report gets generated and it gets communicated to three parties. Who are the three parties? Supplier, recipient, interestingly even to your concerned jurisdictional tax officer. So the jurisdictional tax officer gets to know whatever the mismatches which are happening on a monthly basis. So if there are any fraudulent cases which are happening, even system will also alert and trigger it. Now if the supplier taxpayer does not rectify this, so a mismatch is generated. Now once the mismatch both the next, let's look at the restoration of a modifying invoice. In most of the cases I said if you take this action you cannot do anything, etc. But in case of a modify invoice, now there could be a situation where I have modified an invoice. So go back to that fuzzy logic statement which I said, there could be, it appears to be records are matching. So I have a supplier where I got 10 invoices and my accountant, when they were accounting, they made a mess up. There was a goof up of accounting, invoice number change, etc. And one thing which is very common in the accountants is the smart way of working. If a record is there, press Alt to duplicate the invoice and move on, and which results in some data mismatch and continuing. Now I compared one invoice with a different invoice, and I presumed that the supplier had made a mistake. I corrected the supplier invoice which has come in my 2A or 2. So which means I have modified it. After scrutiny, I realized whatever I have modified is wrong. I have to restore it to the original status. Now there is a process of restoring whatever is modified. The process of restoring is, firstly, your modification. If you see the first tile in the image in the screen is, whenever you modify the invoice, the status is shown as modified. So which means you have corrected it. So if you want to restore, you have to click on the right side action button and reject this modification. So the moment you reject the invoice, what the system does is it marks as rejected and brings it back to the original state. In the current example, I have modified 1810.03 to 1810.00. When I have rejected it, this 1810.00 is restored back to 1810.03. So this is the impact of this. It marks as rejected and brings it back to the original state. In the current example, I have modified 1810.03 to 1810.00. When I have rejected it, this 1810.00 is restored back to 1810.03. So this is the impact of your rejections. Now you have to accept this. So once the status which is there in the rejected, you again have the option to change it back and move it to accepted. That's where you will restore the modified invoices. Now let's look at the the action called pending invoice. Now whenever you choose the option of pending invoice, the impact of it is you are deferring the input tax credit from one tax period to another tax period. So whatever the items which are marking as pending, these are kept as pending, rolled over to the another tax period where you can take further action. So this is a situation where I said the amounts in books and 2A are matching. However, they are pertaining into different tax periods. The last action, which is missing invoice. Now, whenever I click on this action, whenever I choose this action called missing invoices, so the impact is like this. Now, the impact could be in two ways. The supplier, it gets anyhow added back to the supplier in 1A. However, if the supplier has filed their 1, it is added in the 1A. If the supplier has not submitted the 1 yet, then it gets added to the 1 in the supplier as in the tile called uploaded by the taxpayer. So which is uploaded by the recipient taxpayer. So if the supplier has submitted, it gets to 1A. If the supplier has not submitted the data, it amends the GSTR 1. Whenever the data which is moving to 1A, supplier has three options. He can accept it or reject it or again keep pending to reconcile in the further tax periods. So supplier has all these three options. So let's now move on to understanding the table wise data reporting and the issues. So in whole of the GSTR 2, table 3 is a very critical and crucial table. So let's take a minute in understanding this table. Table 3 is all the inward supplies from a registered person other than supplies attracting reverse charge. So these are all forward charges purchases. So what is the data which is getting reported? So if I truncate column 12 onwards, if I have to see column 1 to column 11 of the screen which you are seeing, this is a replica of your GSTR1 table 4. Whatever is the sales data filed by the supplier is copied and presented back to you in table 3 as is. So I need not explain any details up to from 1 up until 11. Let's now understand more from column 12 onwards. Now column 12 is whatever the purchases which you have received. You have to first classify them as whether they are eligible for input tax credit or not. So you have the input tax credit rules. So the T1, T2, T3, various methods, various descriptions have been given to identify whether such credit is an eligible credit or not. Now any credit, if it is not eligible, whether used for personal purposes or used for exempted supply or 17 subsection 5 blocked credit, you have to specifically mark this purchase as ineligible. So I said somewhere in between that your work starts after reconciliation. So right now, till now we have seen the various reconciliations, add, modify, all these things. You have identified the records, mapped into which category they belong to. Then for each item, each invoice at the invoice level and the item level, you will take this action whether that credit is eligible or not. If it is eligible, whether it is eligible as input goods, input services or capital goods, you will be marking each item as that. Now after marking it, there could be a situation where some credit is partly eligible, some credit is not eligible to you. So to the extent of the credit which is eligible, so in the previous slide we have seen the 1810 as the credit which is flowing in. In the next tab, I choose to take entire credit. I feel I am eligible for entire credit. I would be recording amount of ITC available as 1810. I will be recording it as 1810 and take the credit. If I take a lower portion, I am saying that some portion of the credit is not eligible to me and I am reversing it. So I am not taking the credit because it is not eligible. After doing it, I take that action of whether I will accept it or whether I reject it, pending, modify, all those things that would come up. I hope it is clear so far. Moving on to slide 43. This details whatever which is captured on table 3, which is auto populated from the GSTR 1, and you have taken these actions of accept, reject, modify wherever needed. Wherever it is eligible, you marked it as eligible. And if you are finding some invoices as missing, you have an option to add invoices. You took all those actions, right? Those who are doing the data in an online mode. So in an online mode, you log into the online, you will be seeing the details as B2B invoices, supplier wise details. So we are in slide 44. So you will be seeing all the details party wise. So here in this slide, I have given the 5 suppliers. And if you see, one of the supplier has been marked in red as no. What do that no means? The counterparty submit status is no. So counterparty has not submitted their GSTR 1. So your actions are different for yes, your actions are different for no. In fact, wherever it is marked as no, the counterparty can always has an option to change till they file their GST, till they submit their GSTR 1. So you cannot take an action on an item which is marked as no. Other way of saying, you have to consider that this item is only for your information and not for your action. Wherever the items have been marked as yes, those are only those items which is for your action. So when the submit status is yes, counterparty has submitted its GSTR 1 and you can accept, reject, modify is available. You are mandatorily, you cannot skip these records. Anywhere, wherever the submit status is yes, you cannot skip those records. You are mandatorily, you have to either take an action of accept, reject, modify or keep it pending. Once you have taken an action, you cannot go back and edit them. Now if the submit status is no, if the supplier has made the submit status as no, you cannot take any action of accept, reject for where the supplier status is no. If you feel that invoice is correct and you want to add it in your purchases, you have to add this as a missing details. It has to come back as a new record You have to add it as a missing details and file your returns. So let's look at where do we take these actions. If you click on any of the record, if you click on any of the supplier, so you are first seeing this as uploaded by the supplier and uploaded by the taxpayer. Wherever the details you are adding a new record, you will be finding under the tab uploaded by the taxpayer. If you are finding the details under uploaded by the supplier, which means this data is auto populated from your GSTR 2A. Now, after taking an action, you will see that status as accepted, rejected, modified or pending. Till you take action, it would show us no action taken. You want to look into the details of invoice, you can click on that blue button which the arrow mark is showing. It will show you the complete details of the invoice with the supplier GSTIN, name, invoice details and everything. And the reporting of the GSTR is rate wise. So again, under each rate, whatever is the taxable value, eligibility, all that is reported. Against each rate, you have an option to select whether you want to make it as eligible or ineligible and how much of the ITC is available. Now in this case, if you see the place of supply is shown as 33 Tamil Nadu. I also am a recipient registered in Tamil Nadu. Now if the place of supply is not Tamil Nadu, so this is something which would be auto populated by the GSTN stating as ineligible credit. So if the location of the recipient and the place of supply, so listen it carefully, if the location of the recipient and the place of supply are different, system will auto mark those credit as ineligible credit. You will not have an option to change those invoices. In case if you feel that the supplier has made a mistake, you can reject this invoice and add a new item under your GSTR 2. Let's look at the uploaded by the taxpayer section. So when you go to the uploaded by taxpayer section, you will find this add missing invoice details at various places under GSTR 2. At the top of the B2B section, or once you click into the supplier, against each supplier, you can add at a supplier level or at the top level, you have this add missing details. Now once you click on the add missing details, what you are doing is the entire table 3 is presented back with the blank data. So you will be now entering the supplier GSTIN, supplier name is auto populated based on the GSTIN. All the relevant details, you are heading the top portion and the itemized level. At each item you are entering the details. So if you are selecting a place of supply, if you see the place of supply as a different state, it will see in this slide you are seeing that it is marked as ineligible automatically because I would have chosen a place of supply other than my state. So the system would mark it as ineligible automatically. If the place of supply is same as the location of the recipient, then you have these actions as eligible as input services capital goods, and you can further choose the amount of ITC which is available. Whenever you see these boxes in a shaded color, you cannot do any data entry. So let's look at what are the various issues that are going to come up while you file your GSTR to table 3. I'm only right now looking at the table 3 issues and what are the possible solutions. Now let's look at the data validation issues. There are a lot of invoice related validation. Invoice duplication. If a record is already exists. Invoice date validation. Invoice date validation, there are 3 validations to the invoice date. Invoice date should not be greater than the return period. I cannot file an October purchases in my July GSTR 2. Next, this invoice date should not be 18 months older. So the system has defined till up until next September financial year, they have the amendments or addition to the purchases which have been missed out. So that validation is done. Next, the validation is done also on the registration date and the invoice date. So I've registered myself on 5th of July, but if I'm accounting a purchase made on 3rd of July, those credits wouldn't become eligible. I cannot record them as my eligible purchases. In all these cases, my invoice gets rejected. I have also considered the amendment table because it was more relevant. So in case of B2B amendment also, you have the same thing. If I am amending an invoice, first validation, the original invoice should be available, only then I can make the amendment. And the invoice should be in an amendable state. If I have kept an item as pending and I have not completed the action, I cannot again take it under B2B amendment table. And if I'm making any invoice number, a new invoice number, it will also do the duplication check. There is a date check which is available. I cannot make an amendment to the date. The earlier date validations also has to go through the same thing. And there is also a counterparty check. If the invoice number, if I am making an amendment in a B2B table, that amendment cannot be to a different party. So I purchased from X. By mistake, when I am making the amendment, such amendment cannot move to the other counterparty. Other related issues. In one of the purchases, recipient has input goods, input services. So like an AC installation, I have purchased AC, someone has come and installed the AC also. They have given me the invoice for air conditioner 25,000, installation charges 2,000 rupees. I have accounted 27,000. But when I am recording it, this 2,000 I want to record it as an input service. The 25,000 I want to record it as input goods. While filing GSTR2, I cannot record in partly to goods and partly to services, because you have only one action available for at each rate. If supplier has uploaded and I have not accounted it. So if supplier has uploaded, I have not accounted, all that I have to do is download it, compare with my books, and if I find that it is a valid purchase I have not recorded, accept that. It is, I feel that that purchase has not been made, I reject it. If you have a doubt, you can mark it as a pending and defer it to the subsequent tax period. I have accounted the invoices and supplier has not uploaded it. So I am finding the invoices in my books, but it is not available in 2A. All that you have to do is, you have to add them as a missing invoices. Supplier has uploaded the invoice, but the amounts are mismatching. There is a small issue in the amounts. So in this case, either you can accept the suppliers looking at the quantum and everything, or you can reject it or modify it, add a new record. So all these options are available. What happens if I take an ineligible credit? Can I take an ineligible credit? System has no method of validating whether the credit which you have taken is eligible or ineligible. You have to manually mark it as eligible or ineligible, and if you have taken an ineligible credit, it is handled at the time of audit and assessment. There could be an issue where multiple invoices are issued by the supplier and I am recording a consolidated invoice, say bank charges, or there are recurring purchases which I do every day, and a consolidated statement I am recording month end as one invoice. In most of the things, what you have to ideally do it is, the supplier has uploaded all the data, download that, put a pivot or summarize that data and see whether it is matching at a supplier level. Once it is matching at the supplier level, you can choose to accept all those records. Can a taxpayer add purchase invoice prior to the date of registration in GSTR2? I said this is something which cannot be possible because it will show the date validation error. Moving on to table 4, GSTR2. So if you see this table carefully, here the number of columns is same like GSTR3, table 3 of GSTR2. The number of columns are same. The only difference here is it is divided into 3 sections: 4A, 4B, 4C. Again, the 4A is also auto-populated because it is an inward supplies from a registered supplier where the taxes are payable on reverse charge. So whenever the taxes have been payable under reverse charge, the actions which you have to take for this is same like GSTR to table 3, the add invoices, missing invoices, all that would be same. So let's focus more on table 4B and table 4C. Now table 4B is inward supplies received from an unregistered supplier. So which is all your 9(4) purchases and which are taxable. I'm not talking about an exempted purchases. So these purchases you have to record it manually. And what is that you have to give is GSTIN of the supplier. So in this case not applicable. So you have to give the name of the supplier, invoice details, all these 16 columns have to be filled. So table 4A is auto populated, 4B and 4C to be filled manually. Now in case if the place of supply and location of recipient is not same, let me tell you again, the input tax credit will not be available. So I am moving on to slide 56. How do I add unregistered taxable purchases? Table 4B in an online mode, it shows you to inward supply from an unregistered taxable persons. You can add these details. Now when you click on this add details button, it will show you the whole same table of the adding a new missing details. So same like a new missing details, just that the GSTIN is missing. In that place you have the supplier name. Now you have the tax invoice rules, which also allows you to record these purchases on a consolidated basis for all 9(4) purchases. So interstate and intrastate, so you can segregate, and all the 9(4) taxable purchases you can create one self invoice every month, and you will record it either consolidated basis or each party wise. The challenge here you would have is segregating them into rate wise. So whatever the purchases which you have made, you have to consolidate, maybe do summarize, pivot, everything, calculate what are the items available in each rate and mark it whether it is eligible for ITC, how much of it is eligible. So whenever in the amount of ITC available, you are writing an amount, that much ITC would be available. Again they have a validation check. If you have amount of tax as 100 rupees, the amount of ITC available cannot be more than 100 rupees. So the points for you to note here is 4A, 4B, 4C has to be updated invoice wise. Of course 9B you have 9 subsection 4 you have consolidated one self invoice every month, and you also have 8/2017 notification where if the purchases are less than 5,000, so this is applicable up until 13th October notification, where the purchases are less than 5,000, those purchases from unregistered dealer, though taxable, would be treated as an exempt purchase. If it is an exempt, it will not be reported under this table, you will be reporting under exempted table. Slide 59. So what are the issues which would be coming up on table 4? What should be the invoice number that needs to be reported? Is it a vendor invoice number? Now the invoice number under GST cannot be duplicate. So same unregistered purchases, I am buying from 10 parties. 10 parties can have this invoice serial number 111. I cannot report invoice serial number 1 multiple times. So it has to be unique, and that is where we have to report whatever is the self tax invoice which you are issuing for each unregistered purchase, that needs to be reported. And continuing with that rule 46, where you are consolidated issuing one self tax invoice, you can consider one self tax invoice. Can I issue one self tax invoice for both interstate and intrastate purchases? Answer is no. So the interstate purchases are dealt in 5 subsection 4 and this is dealt in 9 subsection 4. You got to issue 2 separate invoices for these cases. And what shall be the place of supply? In all these places, the place of supply is your location. Moving on to table 5 GSTR 2, which is on imports. Now imports of goods is recorded into 2 categories. Importation of services under table 4C, same like an unregistered purchases. So importation of goods is under 2 categories, whether it is a direct import or import from an SEZ. So it is reported under 2 sub-tables, 5A and 5B. So data that gets reported here is, firstly you will only have IGST because it is treated as an interstate supply. So you would be writing GSTIN of the supplier in case of SEZ, and the data to be furnished is the bill of entry details. What is the bill of entry number, date, value, and what is the taxable details. In a while I'll show you the details of it. And this details has to be at the port code and the bill of entry is a 13-digit data. In the online, the screen would be something like this. So you are giving a port code and you are also giving a bill of entry number. So port code is always a 6-digit port code and bill of entry number is a 7-digit bill of entry. Put together it's a 13-digit value. Your bill of entry date, bill of entry value. In case if it is an SCZ, you click on this SCZ, you will get the supplier of the GSTIN. And what you have to enter is the transaction value, each again rate wise, what is the taxable value, what is the assessable value at your customs clearance. So that value and the amount of tax, the rules for ITC, whether eligible, not available and how much is available is same like earlier details. So the data which is captured is the GSTIN in case of SCZ, the port details, port code and the taxable value means accessible value for the customs purpose. So where do I get these details? I said this details is not auto populated. Now the regular purchases I have been matching with my books of accounts. But where do I match these payments? Though I am making the payment of taxes at the time of purchases which is made, though I am making the payment, I still have to do this data entry manually. Now after doing the data entry manually, to check whether what I have reported is correct or not, you have to log into ICAI portal and verify it. I have given the URL on the top of it where how you can log in and verify. You click onto this link and give the details and your IEC code and the bill of entry details. You will automatically see your options for asking which location code the import was done and which tax period you want to see the details. So once you give the details, you will see the port code, the bill of entry number, the bill of entry date, the challan number, the reference ID, all these details are available. This data has to be matched with your table 5 reporting. Only then these credits are given as an eligible credits. How do you track details? You also can track these details in the home page. There is an option called bill of track bill of entry. You can get there and get into details of each bill of entry and look at the document status. So when you click on the tracking of the bill of entry, you will be getting the details of each invoice wise bill of entry, the values which are available. Please capture the details what is mentioned in this in your books of accounts, because the matching is done for imports with the ICAI details. So I have captured what are the likely validation errors that would be coming up for importation of goods. Whenever you have the importation of goods, you have this date validation, because you cannot have a bill of entry of a different tax period reporting in this tax period, meaning a future tax period data cannot be reported now. Same 18 months validation. Again, you cannot have a purchases made before the GST registration reported. You also have an invoice number duplication check, which is you cannot have the same bill of entry recorded again and take input tax credit. Whenever you take these actions, you will get the bill of entry as invoice rejections in your error report. The other issues which commonly asked is, I paid IGST while importing, but however they are not appearing in my GSTR2. Now I said this is not an auto populated, this needs to be manually entered. Where can I find my port code and the bill of entry? I have given you the URL. You can log in there and get the details of both the port code and the bill of entry number. What shall be the place of supply? Again here the place of supply should always be your place of supply for taking the input tax credit. Moving on to table 6. Now table 6 is an amendment to the tables which is reported earlier, table 3, table 4, table 5. Now these are the tables. Whenever you have a data which is wrongly filed, you can amend it. Most of the times, if the supplier has made any amendments, that data is again auto populated. If the data is not auto populated, you as a tax recipient also has an option of updating the data manually. Now this table, not just the amendments, it also captures both debit note and credit note. Now debit note, credit note details also has the various amendments. So this table has 4 subtables, 6A, 6B, 6C and 6D. So 6A is for amending table 3 and 4. 6B is for amending table 5. 6C is recording original debit note and credit note. 6D is amending the debit note, credit note which is originally recorded. I'm not going to deal much of this issue, this table, because this is a data likely issue which is coming in a future date. But however, if a data is missing, you also have an option to add it. So in the next slide, slide number 70, I have shown how do you add it. So whenever you log into the debit note, credit note section, if you're not finding any record, you have this option to add credit note, debit note. So when you click on this add credit note, debit note, you will again get the details of credit note number, credit note value, the reason for credit note, debit note, and all those relevant details needs to be updated. So what are the data entry errors or validation errors which are done by the GSTN for these records? Now, basic, whatever we have seen earlier, the same similarly, you cannot have a duplicate invoice number, duplicate debit note or credit note number. Second, there is a invoice number validation. I have not reported original invoice number, but I am recording a debit note or a credit note to that. Again, the note gets rejected. It does a supplier GSTN validation and the value validation. If my original invoice is for 50,000, I cannot have a credit note beyond 50,000. So there is also a value validation. Then there is a return validation. So you know the credit note and debit note also has to be given in the same the financial period for which you have the time limit. It does the date validation. The other couple of validations are the credit note cannot be after the invoice date and the tax rate validation. So the tax rate of invoice should be same as the tax rate which has been taken in the credit note. So wherever I am changing a different thing, then again the credit note gets rejected. The other issues which are coming up in the credit note and debit note is, can I report a credit note for importation of the goods? So whenever you have imported the goods, you do not have an option to report the credit note. Can I report a credit note for an unregistered purchases? Yes, they have given the option to reverse the input tax credit which you have taken. So table 6C of the GSTR2, you can add a credit note for an unregistered purchases. If the B2B supplier did not file the credit note, can I report it manually? Yes, again you can report the same thing manually by adding a credit note or debit note. Moving on to table 7. Table 7 is a pretty simple, straightforward table. So it's a matrix of all your purchases where you do not get any input tax credit. I'm not saying that this is not an ineligible credit. These are the purchases where you have not even paid taxes. So it is a purchases for taxable purchases from a composition dealer, exempted purchases from a registered or an unregistered dealer. So the expected reporting of it is a consolidated. There is no rate-wise reporting. You got to segregate between party-wise. So composition purchases, exempted, nil, non-GST supplies, and how much of it is purchases within the state, how much of the purchases from other state. This information to be recorded at a gross value. So couple of issues in this table is, first question, since I'm not taking any input tax credit, should I report them? The answer is yes. Irrespective of the input tax credit, these purchases needs to be reported. I have made a data entry error in this. Can I make an amendment? There is no amendment option to the table 7. However, you can adjust the same in the subsequent tax period. Net off the amounts, whatever needs to be reported, you can net it off and show it so that a consolidated value is matching back with your books. How will I know that I am making a purchases from a composition dealer? Whenever you are recording the purchases, you will know whether that bill has any tax amount, and the composition dealer explicitly says that it's a composition supplies. Moving on to table 8, input service distributor credits. Now this is there are not much challenges which you are going to see now unless the invoices are rejected and the credit notes are issued. This is a fairly simple. So input service distributor, as and when the purchases are made at their level, they transfer the credits, and these credits are auto populated in your table 8. And whenever the credits are missing, you have an option to record them manually. Moving on to table 9, TDS and TCS credit. These credits, right now these provisions have been deferred, so you are not going to get any credits of TDS and TCS. By the way, though they are reported under GSTR 2, they are not your input tax credit. They have to be treated as same like your cash payments. Moving on to GSTR 2 table 10, little crucial table, complicated to understand, but fairly simple. Like GSTR 1, when you have a liability to pay taxes upon receipt of advances from your customers. Similarly, if you are making an payments to an unregistered supplier, had it been a registered supplier, such supplier is paying taxes to the government. Since the payment of taxes is paid in advance to an unregistered supplier, the tax portion of that has to be discharged by you. So you would be reporting under 10A of advance amount paid for reverse charge purchases during the tax period. So how much of the advances you have paid to an unregistered supplier, both interstate and intrastate in a subsequent thing, at a rate wise you would be reporting. As and when you report, you are creating a liability. Now the month in which you are recording this as a purchases under table 4, you would be reversing this data under 10B. So this is just a notional liability payment and reversal. Moving on to table 11. So this table needs some explanation and understanding. This is not an auto populated. This needs to be done manually. Now there are input tax credit rules. So when you refer back to your section 16, it gives various reasons why the input tax credit should be made eligible. Only upon fulfilling those conditions, the input tax credit is eligible. So we are saying we are reversing an item under table 11 means it was a valid credit, it is an eligible credit. You have not fulfilled certain conditions of input tax credit eligibility, so you are reversing it. Now whenever we talk about reversal of input tax credit under GST, it doesn't go to GSTR 2 electronic credit ledger. It will be added to your liability ledger. Now I am reversing it. Instead of reducing your credit, it gets added back to your liability, and certain provisions reduces your liability. So let's look at rules one by one. So I am moving to slide 80 where the rules have been explained. So first rule is 37 subsection rule number 37(2), where I have an obligation to make the payment to the vendor within 180 days. If the payment is not made within 180 days, this is added back as a liability. Again, it is a manual obligation, so I have to add the amount here. This gets added as a liability. In case of input service distributor, because of the credit notes, if there is any negative liability which is coming in, I have taken an excess credit and that credit has to be reduced. That credit is now added back as liability. Rule 42, where there are common credits which are attributable to exempt supplies, or if there are any common credits to be reversed on account of non-business purchases, the rule 42 attracts, and I have to reverse it every month. Now also the rule 43, which is for the capital goods, I have to reverse it over 60 tax periods. So whatever I have reversing under rule 42, also which I am doing on a month on month on an ad hoc basis, I have to recompute that once every annually. Now whenever I am recomputing it, so there might be chances that I have excess reversed or I have a short reverse. Both that are adjusted, either added back to my output tax liability or reduced from my output tax liability. Now apart from this, if there is any to table 12. This table 12 is though available in your form, it is not available in your online because this data is completely auto-populated. So this data arises because of the mismatch in the input tax credits on various reasons and the other all other reversals. The system calculates and adds to your output tax liability or reduces in the subsequent tax periods. So I'm not going to deal much with the table 12. Moving on to the last table, which is table 13, HSN wise summary of the inward supplies. My personal view, this is going to be one challenging table for reporting because whenever you are making a purchases, not many captures the HSN item of the item which is being purchased. For example, I make a staff welfare related purchases. So you buy soap, tissue papers, or any cups and everything. Now you may go to one place and buy the 100 different items. When you are recording back in your ledger, you are debiting say staff welfare and there is no HSN recorded at that ledger. You do not know what is the unique measure of those items. It could be pieces, kgs and everything. This table is going to be a very challenging table and you got to really ensure that there is a sufficient planning done to extract this data from your books of accounts. And those of you are recording Tally, maintaining books of accounts in Tally, I would personally recommend do not create a ledger for each HSN. Then your list of ledgers would be as lengthy as the number of items that are going to be dealt in India. So preferably create each one as an inventory item, record it. Do not integrate inventory with the books of accounts. At least is captured by the GSTR, by the accounting software. Currently, what we are told, this table is not seriously viewed and there is no reconciliation mandatory of this table with the all other information of the other tables. So you can at least report the material purchases at a broader level where your core materials which is being purchased, you categorize the HSN, which actually amounts to 95% of your business transactions, which is easily available. What is not easily available is that balance 5% of the business transaction, which has lot of the other data. Now, in terms of reporting, who has to report? So the HSN has to be reported if the turnover in the previous financial year is more than 1.5 crores. So aggregate turnover is more than 1.5 crores. Only then HSN wise reporting is required. When I say HSN wise reporting is required, doesn't mean that this table is exempt for others. For others, instead of HSN, they got to report the description. Now, the description, the quantity, the values. If the turnover is between 1.5 to 5 crores, the HSN to be reported at first 2-digit level, so which is the chapter level. If the turnover is more than 5 crores, first 4 digits have to be reported in the HSN wise. So with this, we complete all the 13 tables of the GSTR2. There are other queries not specifically pertaining to any table, but maybe relating generally overall. So one probable issue that would come up is your prepaid expenses. For example, I have made a purchases, but in my books of accounts, I amortize over 12 months. So I have paid an AMC charges and I am amortizing over 12 months. How do I record and how do I take credit of it? Now, ideally, these items, I expect you record the full value of the purchases. So assuming a 12,000 paid for the AMC, which you want to amortize 1,000 every month, record entire 12,000 as your expense, reverse 11,000, park it into prepaid, apportion back 1,000 every month, and when you are apportioning back 1,000 every month, track these items as non-GST because you have already recorded, or GST not applicable. So you got to ensure a system configuration to handle these credits. Next, the error report is generated but not loaded in the tool or nothing is appearing. This happens because you are not using the latest version of the Java utility. Load the latest version of the Java utility, these errors gets auto-populated and reported. What should be the bill-wise references to the tax ledgers which I am using? So there is also a practice where each rate wise people create tax ledger, 5%, 18%, 12%, CGST output, SGST output, everything. My personal recommendation, do not create rate wise ledgers because everything gets consolidated. Next, these ledgers do not activate any bill wise reference because there is no bill wise knocking off of utilization of input tax credit. Do not activate even the bill wise reference. If there is a rate revision, can I do it through credit note or debit note? Now I have sold a product. I should have sold at 18%. I have sold at 12%. The differential 6%. How do I handle it? Currently, this credit note, debit note do not have the facility to handle only rate. It flows from the taxable value and gets calculated. The only option here is issue a credit note for the full value of the invoice and raise a debit note for the differential item. What happens to this provision entries? Now every month in my books of accounts, I create a provision. So I did not get the rental invoice from my landlord or security charges. I am making provisions. Now these provisions which are making at the month end of the month are not to be reported for the GST because you have not concluded your purchases. It is a provision entry for your records. Record this provision, park it to your current liability, reverse it in the beginning of the subsequent month, and whenever you get an original invoice, record those invoice. So find a methodology to track it, because if these items are not tracked properly, most of the times what happens as a part of the accounting, say for security charges, I record security charges to security charges payable, and whenever an invoice is received from the vendor, I debit the security charges payable and give a credit to the vendor. Now this aspect where the real purchase is happening doesn't get captured by the system, and whenever you do the matching, it finds that there is an entry in 2A but not in 2. So these kind of issues that would come up. How do I do accounting by way of journal entries? Now most of the time we have this habit of recording all the inward supplies in the journal entries. Only the core purchases are done through purchase module. All other entries are done through journal entries. Whenever the entries are done through the journal module, there cannot be any transactions captured of the invoice number and other details. So most of the accounting softwares are now giving this additional feature of capturing the additional details so that the auto matching of the bill happens. In case of an ineligible credit, how do we charge it off to the P&L? Now whatever the credit, whether it is eligible or not, at the first instance this credit has to be recorded in the books of accounts. Only then you will do this matching between 2A and the books. After marking it as an ineligible, end of the tax period, whatever the items which have been marked as ineligible, you got to charge off from your current assets back to the P&L. When you are charging back it to the P&L, you should also find a mechanism to find what is the original nature of the head, so that you gross it up the expenditure and park it to the original nature of the head. Staff welfare purchases has many items. How to do the reporting of the HSN? Again, as I said, activate the inventory module. Whatever the items which are being purchased, add it to the inventory items, so that the system captures whatever is the purchases made and the HSN wise summary is captured. So with this, I thank you for your listening, and with this we have completed the GSTR 2 related issues and challenges. We are going to take whatever the questions which we have received so far. We are going to take all those questions. So question from Rajiv Saxena. GSTR 2 has correct details of all inward invoices, but 2A has one invoice which is missing. What has to be done in this case? Is it okay to ignore 2A and 2 has all the details? It is very unlikely. There was a system issue between the time to refresh between 2A and 2. So wherever you have these issues, once you download the latest data, it gets refreshed. Whatever the data which is there in your 2 is your final data. Can we file GSTR 2? So question by Maheshwari, without filing GSTR 1. Definitely GSTR 2 can be filed before filing of GSTR 1. Ankit Goyal, in GSTR 2, where should we consider the missing exempted inward supplies? So option 1, table 3, 4A, Option 2, table 7 exempted. Though being B2B, are these exempted? Please clarify. Again, very simple. Table 3 you would be using if it is from a registered person and their taxable supplies. So even if it is a registered person, you are making an exempted purchases, that goes to your table 7. So record these purchases in table 3 if they are not available. Vineet Soni. Can we take input tax credit paid on reverse charge in the same month? The answer is yes. It gets automatically when you report the unregistered purchases in your table 4. It gets added to your liability and the credit is also available in the same month.
I would just like to add one point to this. Although you can take the credit of RCM in the same month, first you need to exhaust the ITC ledger. Then only if the balance is there, then you can claim the reverse charge.
Yeah, so the reverse charge credit, whatever you are taking, there is an obligation to discharge this reverse charge also by way of cash. Neelang, whether the late fee provisions are applicable for 3B, as per the sections, the late fee are payable on the section 38, 37, 38. So this is a very interesting question. Now the 3B, though it is defined in the rules, not in the section. Theoretically, the late fee may not be applicable and it can be challenged in the thing. Currently, late fee is also levied to the 3B, and every month they are giving a notification for way of waiving of the late fee.
There are some 400 plus questions we have received. So to the extent possible, we'll try to address the questions which is possible. So there's one question actually. What is the due date for filing or accepting or rejecting GSTR 1A? Actually, it is in a general context, regular date. So 15th is my due date for GSTR 2 and 17th is the due date for GSTR 1A. So till now we were not clear about what would happen for this month of July, wherein the dates have been specified for 1, 2 and 3 but not 1A. But now if we look in the portal, the date is mentioned as 2/11/2017. That means to say that after
31st October.
After 31st October, which is the due date for filing GSTR 2, we only have 2 days to get it accepted by the supplier. So this is a very critical part. If you want to get the credit out of it, it is important to note that in these 2 days you contact your supplier and get it accepted so that you can get the credit of it. Now one question from Vinod Kumar. GSTR 2 table 7 asks for nil rated and exempt supply separately. So what is nil rated and what is exempt supply? Now if we look at notification number 2/2017, which exempts the goods and certain goods for that matter, and notification 12/2017, which exempts certain services. Of course, on 13th we have few more notifications getting added to that list. So only these specified goods and services under the notifications will fall under exempt supplies. Till now, if we see, are there really any nil rated supplies, the inward supplies? The answer would be no, because only when it comes as part of the rate notification as nil rated, that would fall under nil rated. So there is one question from Prakash Kadur. In GSTR 1, the dealer has entered voucher number instead of invoice number. Now how do we correct this? So as I said in my presentation, there are few tables which are amendable and there are few tables which are non-amendable. Probably I missed out mentioning one point. If there are so many fields, to the extent I remember there are some 13 fields which needs to be filled per invoice wise. And there is a facility to amend each and every field which is filled originally. So all these invoice numbers which were wrongly entered can be amended by filing your next month GSTR return. Alternatively, which would be an Herculean task, you should connect to all your recipients, all your buyers, talk to them, ask them to amend those details and send it. I mean, personally, my view would be you can correct it in the next month as part of amendment. So the next question is from Mr. Rajesh. In 3B of July month, net liability is 600 paid in cash after adjusting credit of 400 from the output liability of rupees 1000. In GSTR 2 of the said month, credit is 500. I missed to take credit in 3B. Whether the excess amount of 100 would be credited to my electronic ledger? If yes, I can utilize said credit for payment. The answer is absolutely yes. Because while filing GSTR 2, you will accept all these credits or you will add this credit, and once you add these, it will get transferred to your electronic credit ledger, and definitely you can use this to offset your liability. One question from Jasmine Thakkar. If GST number of part 3 is wrongly mentioned, how to rectify the same? Again, this is a part of the amendment detail. You can amend it in the table 9.
Yeah, adding to that question, maybe you can contact back the original recipient. Original recipient can add it in the as an amended table addition in the GSTR2, and where you have issued to a wrong GSTN ID, you can contact them asking them to reject the that invoice. So both can also be rectified in the same month.
So this question is on ITC to be taken on capital goods, which is used exclusively for business purpose, and how much would be available in the first year. Okay, see, once we move on to the GST regime, we should unlearn certain old things wherein we had the practice of taking 50% in the first year, 50%, or in the later on year. Here we have to refer to Rule 43. Okay, first of all, when should we refer Rule 42 and 43? One thing, when I have expenses which are both business as well as non-business. The second most important thing is when my outward supply includes both taxable as well as exempt outward supply. Mind you, exempt outward supply can be as common as FD interest as well, which we might generally miss out. So, assuming I do not have any exempt inward supplies, outward supplies for that matter, Rule 42 to that extent would not be applicable. We can happily go ahead claiming the credit easily. Similar scenario would apply to this question where you are asking the capital goods. If your outward supply is exclusively taxable supply, then you can claim the entire credit in the month of purchase on receipt of those capital goods. Alternatively, if you have both taxable as well as outward, exempt outward supply, you will have to apply Rule 43, wherein you will divide your entire ITC into 60 months, take the entire ITC current month and start reversing next month onwards the 1/60th portion of it along with the interest in the ratio of your exempt turnover versus your total turnover. So this is a challenge, and this is probably a cost benefit analysis needs to be done, whether it is worth taking the whole credit and paying the interest or letting go of it. So you have to individually evaluate in each of the cases. One of our clients filed, question from Rajesh, one of our clients filed GSTR 1 of July month without filing GSTR 3B of July month. Now he is unable to file 3B for that month. Without filing 3B for July month, system is not allowing for August or September. How can you, what is the course of action available in this context? Okay, first of all, in case you have not filed July month GSTR 3B, you can proceed to complete July month's GSTR 1, 2 and 3. Once you file this, there will not be any need which arises to file your GSTR 3B for July month. But since you did not file it, what impact it is going to have is the late fee impact for August month and September month. So it is extremely, you have to take care of all these scenarios and be compliant to the extent possible. One question from Saurabh. My client is providing car hire services and charging 5%. Thus, they are not liable for ITC. When I am viewing GSTR 2A, there I can see the input invoices. Thus, can I claim the ITC or not? Just because it is getting auto-populated to your login ID, which obviously will get populated if you have given your GST, it doesn't mean that you need to accept everything. As Mr. Venugopal wonderfully explained, how you should analyze each of the invoice as to whether it is an eligible credit or ineligible credit. Since you are not eligible to claim it, go to that invoice, tick on the column 12 if I'm not wrong, ineligible ITC, choose it there, then you will, and do not claim it. We are a trader, Pratik, question from Pratik. We are trader of textile fabrics. Earlier pre-GST, the textile fabrics was exempt from excise, custom, VAT, service tax, etc. So now I don't have exact value or quantity of our product. My question is it compulsory to file TRAN 1, 2, 3? I do not want to take the credit. whatever is given as an option is never a compulsion. Option is always an option. So only if you want to take the credit and if you are eligible to take the credit, then only you have to file it, otherwise no. I have paid the late fees in penalty column for the month of August. I am unable to offset. As I repeatedly said in my presentation, I reiterated, very important to fill in the columns while making the challan payments in exact same applicable field. If you miss out or if you make a mistake, then definitely it cannot be offset. What is the alternative is make the payment again in the right column, then be careful while filing November month GSTR 3. You can utilize that table 14 of GSTR 3 which I explained earlier, and it is not that only for July month if you made a wrong payment or an excess cash payment, only that you can claim a refund. It is not like that. Let us say you are filing your July month GSTR 3 on 8th of November for that matter. On 7th you made a wrong payment. Even that wrong payment you can take as a refund by passing a debit entry using the table 14 of GSTR 3.
Right. So there are many questions. Now we would like to answer most, if not all. I will move on a little faster. So question from Komal Gupta. Whether a supplier can accept the invoice in GSTR 1A for July if he has not filed GSTR 1 for the same month. Now, and if you are, as I have explained, if you have not filed your GSTR 1, whatever the additions which are made, it will be now coming into GSTR 1 of you because you have not filed. They are coming to you as the data uploaded by the tax recipient. So there will not be any 1A for you. Sayeda, will updation of invoice details by registered customer treated as B2C increases my liability upon acceptance of his invoice? Is there an option of letting customer take credit on provisional basis without me accepting invoice in 1A and I modify the error in the next month? Obviously this is possible. So consider that is the reason they have given the tax period as M+2. So whatever the adjustments which has been given, if you are not responding to it, you have an accept, reject or pending. If you are not taking action on it, it will move to the next tax period. A classic example, when I make a sale, the recipient has not given the GSTN ID. I have considered as B2C and supplied it, but the person has added as a missing details. Now it is coming as 1A. Now if I accept that in my 1A, my liability is going to increase. I have already reported this as my B2C. I choose not to pay the additional liability now and I can defer it to the subsequent month. Because I am deferring it to the subsequent month doesn't mean that the credit to the other person is denied. In the subsequent month, whatever this 1A which has come to me, I will accept it and I go to the amendment table. B2C, I reduce my turnover to that extent. Because I have already paid taxes, there is no additional liability for me, and since I have also accepted it, there is no also interest liability to the recipient and no reversal.
I think this would be one of the common issues which
are likely to come up. Yeah. So Dhananjay, how to convert JSON file to an Excel file? We have shown you both the ways of manual and the third party utilities. Ankit Jain, what will be the solution if I want to revise a bill from intrastate to an intrastate? Very surprising question. Generally systems take care of this. The moment I report the GSTN of my the recipient, automatically system says whether interstate or intrastate. I have to forcibly change the place of supply. I am presuming in your case you have made a wrong place of supply entry, which I have given the example. You can ask the recipient to reject the invoice, amend or add the new invoice, and you can accept that invoice. Sravil, I have invoices in GSTR 2A but none of them are visible in GSTR 2. Please help. You have to click on the generate GSTR 2 summary button where you are allowing the data to fetch from 2A to 2 automatically.
I think they should also decide whether they want to do it offline or online before clicking the
generate button. Manish Malhotra, IGST input paid on imports not showing in the credit ledger, what to do? I said again the table 5 of GSTR 2 is a manual data entry. the imports IGST is not an auto population, and while you do the data entry, please log into the IceGate portal. Please check the bill of entry details what you are filing in table 5 as matching that. Otherwise, these credits which you are taking under table 5 will get reversed under table 12 of the subsequent month automatically. Kushbu, how to input sales data invoice with multiple GST rate in a single invoice via utility. Data to be punched in the utility is invoice number and GST rate wise. With multiple GST rates in a single invoice, duplicate invoice error is occurred. Now I didn't get the question quite well, but I am presuming it. When you made items which are being sold, there are multiple rates. Can I do the same rate wise multiple times? The answer is no. You have to consolidate all the different rates into again sum it into under 18%. What is the total value? Under 5%, and that summed value is what you have to report it.
I think this question is on a B2B case, table 4 when we fill it. This we had an issue initially when we used the GSTR 1 offline utility, the first version. They have rectified it in the latest version where we can use the multiple line items for the single invoice.
Right.
So that can be, so ensure that you download the latest version and do it.
Santosh Kumar, import air freight is exempted. However, where margin is loaded while invoicing to the customer by forwarder department had earlier claimed that such margin shall be liable to service tax as business support services. Under GST, how to disclose these details in GST return? GST cannot be mentioned on invoice due to exemption. Please advise how to show it. Now, GST provisions are fairly simple. If you have a purchases where it is exempted. Now, how do you show it is exempted? You have not paid any taxes, nor the other registered person is paying taxes. And if you are making a purchase from an unregistered person, you are going to check the notification 12 for services, notification 2 for goods, and checking whether that item is exempt. If that is exempt, you would be reporting the same data under exempted table, and there is no other line-wise reporting of all these expenses. Nagbhushan, can we issue credit note for those invoices which are not accounted or accepted by the client? If not, what happens to the tax paid on the original invoice? Now, Nagbhushan, if an invoice is filed and submitted, the other person has no choice. He cannot keep an invoice unattended. Either it has to be accepted, rejected, or he has to keep it pending. Only those invoices where GSTR 1 is not submitted, the other person can do nothing and no action need to be taken. In your case, there could not be a situation where the other person has not taken an action, and having taken an action, if such person has rejected and you accept that rejection, your liability will also come down and the need for credit note do not arise. If the other person has accepted, you issue a credit note referring to the original invoice, and as and when the other person has accepted the credit note, their liability gets added and your liability gets reversed. Himanshu Gupta, my client has 500 sales invoice. As you know, we cannot work on it online. Now one GST number I had uploaded incorrect. How should I edit this? I am unable to do it from the offline utility. So I understand this practical challenge. If there are multiple line items and which has been filed and there is any error in one item, or if one item needs to be edited, so you cannot browse through and edit it. There are a lot of third-party utilities which are coming. All that they would be doing is they fetch all the details, show all the details to you. You can select one record and make an amendment to it and pass on only that record to the GST portal. The portal will get automatically updated. Sridhar, we are developing a commercial tower wherein we are not availing any input tax credit. In such scenario, do we need to add missing invoice details in GSTR2? The answer is very well yes. What you have to report in your GSTR2 is all your purchases, whether or not you are taking any input tax credit on that. Mr. Ganesh, could we file GSTR 1 of July from 1st November 2017? Currently GSTR 1 is not able to be filed. Of course, yes, after the filing window of GSTR 2 is closed, you can act on GSTR 1. So whenever GSTR 1 filing window is active, you cannot take action on GSTR 2 and vice versa. Ankita, we have filed 3B, but there was excess credit availed. Differential liability arising was paid on detection. Later on, will interest be charged? Now, whatever you have filed under 3B, consider you have filed it for an ad hoc basis for the purpose of tax payment. When you are filing your GSTR 1, 2 and 3, you are redetermining your actual liability. When you are redetermining your actual liability, it traces back to the original due date, and if your liability is increasing, the increased liability interest would be calculated from the original due date of filing your 3B. If your filing 3B was extended, whatever the date on up to which the liability, the due date was there, from there liability gets calculated. Shreeshekar Agarwal, if someone has opted for composition scheme during the month of July to September, but opted out as soon as the portal was active for opting out, now whether they have to file the returns under the regular scheme for July to September along with the penalty. When Mr. Shreeshekar, when you have opted out, if you log into your portal, you might notice that for most of the dealers where they were not eligible for composition scheme, so service dealers, they have opted it by mistake. Now initially the filing window for the first quarter was shown as July to October, and based on the core fields, now the window might be showing as July, August, September. So when you log into the portal, what the options which are available to you, you got to use that and file it. And if there is any tax liability, interest would be calculated accordingly. Vidyadhar, if we have amended previous month GSTR 1 or 2B, I'm not sure what you are referring in 2B, which month the tax needs to be paid. Now if I am amending the previous month GSTR 1, assuming I have reported a tax invoice value of 1 lakh and tax accordingly, subsequently I am amending the invoice value to either 1 lakh or 2 lakhs by way of amendment or credit note. Whatever is the original date it pertains to refers to the original due date for which, within which taxes needs to be paid, and based on that the interest gets calculated. Nagesh M. SSC migrated to GST and his turnover is less than 20 lakhs. He collected GST and paid for July and August. Whether he can surrender with effect from 1st August 2017. Now the answer is, if you are surrendering, you have to file your GSTR 10 in case of the regular dealer. Now this being a migrated SSC, you have to establish that the turnover is going to be less than 20 lakhs, and proper officer has the right to cancel the GST registration. Vaidehi, what can we do if an invoice reflected under GSTR 2 has no options being reflected on which we can take actions? Where we are unable to take any action on the particular invoice with respect to accept, reject, pending. This could have been a case where the status of that invoice is shown as no, which means the supplier has not uploaded the data but not submitted. You have to add this as a missing details. Saima Aziz, payment of GST made but liability not shown in GSTR 3B. If the same is shown in GSTR 1, whether interest is applicable. Please note, mere payment of taxes doesn't mean discharge of liability. So only when you pay, disclose the turnover in your 3B and liability and offset the liability, that is when you have discharged the liability. Whatever the balance which is available in your cash ledger, as Annapurna mentioned, under GSTR 3, while you are filing, you can just do a drop down and select so much cash to be refunded. It gets processed immediately. So cash ledger you can consider as your extended bank current account. So since the money is still lying with you in your current account, you have not discharged the liability, interest is going to be applicable. Aman, by mistake B2B invoices are clubbed in B2C in GSTR 1 and filed for the month of July. How can we rectify it? You can call your supplier, your recipients, ask them to make an addition to it. Else, in the subsequent month period, in the amendment table, not in the amendment table, you can report any of the GST invoices of the earlier periods under table 4 of GSTR 1. You can add all those invoices and reduce your B2C supplies. Given that you have discharged the liability, there is no interest penalty coming on to you. Dikshita, I have opted for composition scheme on July 2017, but it's showing effective from 1st October. How should I pay taxes for the quarter July to September? As I have issued bill of supply since July and did not charge any tax to the customer. Now, you have opted for the composition scheme in July, and that time it is showing as 1st October. So which means your composition scheme is eligible only from 1st October. Until 1st October, you got to comply with the procedure as like any normal dealer. Gauri Babar, where to mention advance paid to the registered supplier under GSTR2. Under GSTR2, there is no requisition for reporting any advance paid, because you will not get the input tax credit. Mere payment of advances doesn't entail you to get the credit. Since the supply of goods or service is not complete, there is no expectation of advance paid to registered dealer reporting. Tara, in GSTR1, I have shown CGST and SGST instead of IGST. How do I correct it? Now again, it is surprising. How would you show as an IGST instead of C plus S, unless otherwise you forcibly change the place of supply. In such a scenario, you can call your recipient, ask them to reject the invoice and add the correct invoice. Namita, we wrongly uploaded JSON file in GSTR1. Then data won't get deleted from GSTR1. We wrongly uploaded JSON file in GSTR1. Then the data won't get deleted from GSTR1 July month. Website won't work that time. So we not uploaded the return. What should we do? Okay. So the question is, you have uploaded lot of data under GSTR1. And one common mistake which I am noticing is, whenever they are using offline utility, when the data is copied, whether B2B, B2C, there is no control of which client data is loaded to the which client GST and ID. Please make a proper control. Now in your case, you had lot of data and you are supposed to correct it and you could not do it. The only option available to you is after 31st October, again you can file your GSTR1 with the corrected data. Seria Kurian, in 7A of Tran 1, in the column value, we need to show the value on which duty is calculated on the invoice related to the quantity. For example, in my invoice, I have purchased 2 items. But as on 30th June, only 1 item in the stock. Do I need to show the invoice value pertaining to that stock on the amount of duty which is calculated for that item? You are perfectly right. Whenever you have a stock as on 30th June and you have an invoice value, you have to proportionately calculate what is the stock which you have. Only on the stock you can claim the proportionate duty. Sudhanshu Tiwari, what is the treatment for the transactions which are done with the unregistered persons in the month of August, September, October 2017? The treatment is fairly simple. If they are taxable purchases, you got to pay taxes under reverse charge, and after the 13th October notification, these purchases would be treated as an exempted till 31st March 2018. Lovinish, one reverse charge entry got skipped while filing GSTR 3B for July. I have included the same in GSTR 2. Whether I am liable to pay interest on such. Now these item which you are paying or filing under GSTR 2 is available as a credit in the same month and as a liability in the same month. So you will not get any additional tax liability. However, you got to ensure you have sufficient cash balance to offset such RCM liability. Tanmay, my client bank has not given the invoice with GST tax amount and I have not shown in 3B. How to deal with it? How to make adjustment in month in which the entry should be booked in July or September when it is auto-populated in 2A. Now, most of the banks have reported their returns, and most of the cases I have noticed the credit of the bank charges and other taxes are appropriately available. So you got to go back to your bank and check whether you have reported your GST. Have they considered you as a B2B? If not, if they have considered as a B2C, then you have to request them to amend and file the details. Mr. Chabra, we have applied 3 GST of the same company and also got issued separate number for each location. We communicate to our vendor for the same, but we are issuing one number for one state. Some of the vendors have deposit in older GST, which we want to surrender. How we will get the benefit of the GST deposit by our vendor in the wrong GST? So I am not quite clear with your question. How would a vendor make a GST deposit? Are you talking about vendor had made a supplies to the old GSTN? Now you can, in all the migrated SSC's case also, again you can file your GSTR 10 once that option is available, and you can surrender the business in that GSTN in that state, provided you are not going to continue any business in that state. Ashutosh, HSN details in GSTR2, whether to give for URD purchases also. So B2B purchases, URD purchases, HSN details, is it required? The answer is yes. You got to report HSN details even for the unregistered purchases. Sandeep Biradar, how can I report if credit notes are more than outward supplies in GSTR 3B? Now, this is a strange question. Earlier, you had the issue of returns not getting accepted with the negative values. Now there could be a situations where in a month I did not make any, your question is applicable by the way only if it is the purchases from sales made to a customers. There could be a situations where I have a negative data. So now the system will accept the negative data also. Abraham Joseph, for SEG units, making a sale via bill of entry to an EOU, will it be deemed export or normal B2B interstate supply? There is no deemed export as of now in the defined act. Any sale made to an SEZ is an export or a zero rated supply. So you have to report under table 5 under GST 2 for the recipient. So in case of import, in case of export, you have to report it as exports only. Anand, I saved the details of invoices uploaded in GSTR1 but have not filed GSTR1. Now, can the invoices be uploaded by the other party? I could not accept in 1A and file the same. And then can I upload GSTR3? So, until the GSTR1 is submitted, there will not be any data coming under 1A. If GSTR1 is not submitted, you always have the option of amending whatever the data which is filed. So in your case, whatever the additions made by the recipient would be shown as uploaded by the recipient, taxpayer recipient, and it would be available in your GSTR1, which you have to mandatorily take action of accept or reject. Akshay, GSTR1 is saved online but not submitted or filed. Customer adds details in his GSTR2 as it is not auto-populated. This would reflect as liability for supplier, for which ITC eligible only for accepting. How to manage such situation when what is added is 100,000 transactions? Now, Akshay, again, as I said, if the GSTR1 is only filed and is only entered and saved, so it is as good as the records is not available. And for the other side, though the records are visible in GSTR2, I cannot take action. I will be adding these new invoices. So in your case, so you have added 100 out of 1000 transactions. These transactions which are added has to be mandatorily be accepted or rejected by the supplier, and accordingly the liability gets calculated for the supplier. Nagesh M, migrated to GST and collected and paid GST for July and August. Turnover is less than 20 lakhs. Expected the same for 18-19. Can the registration be surrendered with effective from 1st September 2017? To surrender and cancel the registration, we have to wait for the option to be open in the portal. Once that is done, we can take the appropriate action. Santosh Patil, if my supplier has added invoices in GSTR1, but GSTR1 is not filed by him, whether I have to add those invoices again in GSTR2? The answer is, unless the GSTR1 is submitted, you have to add it. If it is submitted but not filed, that is sufficient, you can accept those invoices. Ravi Teja, while filing GSTR 3B, we have claimed less input tax credit. Please guide us on how to correct the same in GSTR 2 with full ITC, or should only differential ITC to be shown in the next month. Now, when you file your GSTR 2 with full ITC, your electronic credit ledger gets updated with the incremental credit that is going to be available, and you need not take any action in the subsequent month 3B. Can this PPT be emailed? As I said, this would be available in the portal tomorrow. I have got GST number on 24th July. Now while filing GSTR2, I get to know one purchase's bill dated is 22nd July, for which I have taken input tax credit also. How to take it after the GST registration? Then what about the rule of 30 days liability for GST? Now Shilpa, in this case, the 30 days rule is mentioned from the supplier side. Now I am liable to register and I made an application for registration. Till the application for registration and I get the registration, in the interim period, whatever the sales which have been made, all those sales, I make a revised invoice after the registration date. Now in your case, you are talking about the purchases which you have received before the date of registration. Now if you go back to your section 16, input tax credit is available only for the registered taxpayer. On the date of the registration, you are not a registered taxpayer and these credits are not available. Even forcibly, if you make an entry in the system, system rejects, I have given the data validations which have been given in the system. Renuka, whether B2B invoices is wrongly shown as B2C large in GSTR1, how to rectify the same so that the purchaser can get the credit in the month of July. It is a classic case whether B2C large or small. So allow the supplier, allow the recipient to add that details in the missing record. In the subsequent month you accept it and reduce your B2C liability. Sumit, where to fill RCM paid on unregistered expenses under GSTR2? Table 4B of GSTR2, you will record all your unregistered purchases. Neha, inward supply treated as an expense in the books. Do we require to provide HSN summary of the same? For example, multiple items bought of the different HSN through single invoice are consumed for repairs and machinery. These items are not in the stock, books of accounts are not maintained. Do we require to provide a HSN summary of these items? The answer is whether or not whether you are selling or consuming it internal purpose, all your inward supplies have to be reported as HSN wise in your table 13. Anand, when we are viewing the data in offline utility, for some invoices, the status is not showing anything. Whether we were not able to select the invoices, also the checkbox is not enabled. Wherever you are finding these issues, just go back and check the submit status of the GSTR1. If the submit status is no, you cannot take any action on those invoices. Sumana Jha, I have paid taxes in GSTR 3B for the month of July, but missed out providing sales details in GSTR1 and filed nil returns erroneously. What is the way to rectify the same and include in the sales details? So as again explained in the earlier questions, whatever you filed in 3B, consider it is an ad hoc filing for the purpose of tax payments, and what you are filing in your GSTR 1-2 is the actual tax liability and input tax credit calculation, and accordingly the interest, if there is any shortfall, interest gets calculated. Subramanya, transaction credit works contract in July 2017, which the purchases were made before June. Earlier dealer was under composition scheme, now under GST he is a regular dealer. Whether the dealer can claim input credit for the purchases made during the VAT era. If not, what is the transition provision to claim the credit? So transition credit is available even those who were under composition scheme earlier moving to the regular scheme. However, I was under regular scheme earlier, but moving to the composition scheme under GST, transition credits are not available.
In his case, section 140 subsection 6 would be applicable then.
Where the fixed rate of tax they were paying taxes earlier, there are transition provisions, you can take the credit. Ranganathan TS, where to reverse the credit that are not eligible credit auto-populated in 2A. We wanted to do this since we have reversed the ineligible items. So under table 3, you go to column 12, you have the option to win the drop down. How much is it input services input, and last item is ineligible. You can mark it as ineligible. If you think that partly it ineligible, you mark it as inputs, and a portion which is eligible, write it under amount of ITC available in the last column. There are many questions. I am rushing little fast. Ankit, in GSTR2, where to consider missing exempted inward supplies? Missing exempted inward supplies, of course, will not be there. because the other person in GSTR 1 has reported under bulk the exempted sales. So you have to manually record all your exempted purchases. Aparna, in GSTR 3B for July, forward charge was classified as reverse charge by mistake. Can I rectify under GSTR 1? Answer is very much yes. Mrudula, I am not able to hear. Okay, you can replay it again.
Yes,
Murtaza.
this will be available.
Yes, this recording would be available with the PPT, so you can download also. Murtaza, can we get all this in Excel instead of JSON file? It will help us. So
Definitely,
hope so.
We wish for that. It would have made our life
Easier. Azim, if I have negative sales written, where we can show in GSTR 1, of course you have the sales written. How do you show sales written? It is only by way of credit note, debit note. You report your credit note, debit note corresponding to original sales original invoice number. System would accept, no issue.
In case of B2C transactions where we do all the consolidations, and even if it is negative, it will
system will accept it. Akshay, using third-party JSON converter, there is no security guaranteed for the client data. Very much accepted. GSTN supposed to provide such conversions. Only 7 working days left. So Akshay, in this case, I very much agree with you. I would personally recommend, do not use any cloud softwares. Desktop of applications are confined to the local. So reasonable assurance that data is lying at your site. So you can use the desktop third-party applications.
Just to add a point to this, see, since we do not have an Excel, option which is there, another thing which is possible, of course, this is a manual exercise, but then you have the, when you view the GSTR 2A, you can copy 5 invoices at a time to Excel, but it would be a manual exercise, but still it would be helpful to you to use tools like VLOOKUP and all. This we have been doing in our office, and it's quite a bit handy rather than converting JSON into Excel. Yeah,
you also have that copy paste option. Ashish, GTA has not uploaded his return, thereby not reflecting. How do I proceed? The answer is you add those invoices manually and pay the taxes. Shubham Agrawal, why is it said GSTR 2 is auto-populated return while we have to file it? Even some details like RCM invoices issued by the recipient has to be filed. Shubham, I very well agree with you. In fact, the time and effort in GSTR 2 is much higher than GSTR 1. And blessing in disguise, right now you have this 20 days as a trial period. Please do all the automation which is required so that you can do it in the real version within 5 days.
So countdown, 8 days left.
7 more days actually. Raki Agarwal, if we select a status of any invoice as pending for action, then will it be carried forward to the next month or not? Answer is yes, it would be carried forward. Suraj, we have import purchases and we have huge IGST on imports, but it is not appearing in 2A. Please add it manually. Jigar, it's mentioned for TCS, GSTR 2 is not to be filed. However, till date TDS provision 51 is yet to be implemented. So a person supplying through e-commerce portal, will they not file GSTR 2? Okay, let me correct it here. Every TDS government SSC or an e-commerce operator will have 2 registrations. One would be a regular registration, one would be e-commerce registrations. What is deferred is the TDS and TCS provisions. So for the GSTN, each GSTN will have to go through all the required filing process. The GSTN with the e-commerce operator name or a TDS name need not file GSTR 2. But a regular GSTN, they have to file their GSTR 2. Anjani Ketan, if the supplier has reported invoices wrongly in GSTR 2A and the recipient wants to keep this pending as pending so that this can be followed up with the supplier later. The question is, how long it can be kept pending? Are there any penal consequences for keeping it pending? You can keep it for pending eternally. However, these lapse out of the system automatically after September of the subsequent financial year or annual return, whichever is filed earlier. For keeping it pending, you will not be penalized because you are not taking any input tax credit. Anbu, I have opted for composition scheme, but return window is not opening. Should I file transition form? Now it is a practical call you have to take. There are many people who wants to opt for composition scheme, could not opt it. You have no choice, you have to file it as a regular window.
A question from Pratik. Do any entry of expenses below 5,000 in total for one day is required anywhere in the form 3B of GSTR2? Okay. See, first we should understand what is exempted inward supply. As I reiterated, I would just reiterate again. One is notification 2/2017 and 12/2017 plus whatever is exempt through other notifications, these would be coming under there. So below 5,000 items, definitely it has to be reported under exempt inward supply, table 5 GSTR 3B. Yeah. So another question, penalty of July and August is waived off. Okay, late fee for August, July month is waived off through a notification, but not for August month. There is no notification come with respect to that. Hence, we are getting the late fee implications. Lakshita Bhandari. I registered in September under GST, though I was liable to register in July itself. Return dashboard shows only September month. How to file July and August returns? Include your outward supplies as well in the September month itself and file the return. Sayeda. Will updation, okay, I think I'll take the other questions to answer. Dhananjay Kothari, how to deal with purchase return for both supplier and recipient? Very important and very practical question rather. In the GST regime, purchase return can be initiated only by the supplier. So, the recipient cannot initiate it. So, for this, the recipient has to raise a delivery challan, send back the goods, and the supplier has to issue a credit note. Once he issues a credit note, the recipient needs to accept it. Then only the whole process of purchase return gets concluded. So, Ankit Jain, what will be the solution if I want to revise the bill from intrastate to interstate? This was already taken. Meena Rajesh Jalan, whether GSTR 3B for July 17 be revised, in which month can I claim July 17 RCM paid credit and how? Please guide. Okay. First of all, let me reiterate, there is no concept of revised return in GST, but the thing is, only for the July month, they had enabled an option in those cases only where they had submitted but not filed. I have got many queries as to where is the reset option available. Let me tell you, there is no separate button called reset. Only thing is, that too in the month of July, for the month of July only, if you can try to get into the respective tables of GSTR 3B, it would be available for edit. That itself is the reset option available. How to get refund and adjust erroneously paid IGST? We have discussed this. We have filed GSTR 3B, Shubha Pamecha, showing reverse charge liability under table 3 and also showing same amount in table 4. Okay. But the system does not allow to utilize this amount and to offset the liability. Can it be concluded that RCM, okay, subsequent month. One of the important things to note is, probably I am presuming that in your case, there was no other liability which needs to be discharged in cash. So what you have taken the credit, so if there is only RCM liability, even though the credit is available in the same month, still you have to discharge in cash to the extent of that and then claim the credit in the next month. If there is a wrong payment of CGST and SGST instead of IGST for month of August, can I claim it as refund? Okay. So Sanjeev Kumar, as I said again, while filing November month return, GSTR 3 in the November month, any payments which has been excess till the date of filing, cash ledger excess balances, you can claim a refund of it. Do we need to file 3B for October to December 2017 for SMEs less than 1.5 crore turnover? If so, do we have to pay taxes along with it? Okay. This is a notification which came across. There is a press release, I would rather say, because the notification as such is yet to be, it is awaited rather. Press release said that for SMEs, they are going to make the window as quarterly option, as quarterly payment of tax and quarterly filing of returns. But does it absolve my liability to file GSTR 3B till then? The answer is an absolute no, because it is clearly clarified in the press note also that all the registered assessees need to file GSTR 3B till December. Gagan, I want to surrender my registration, have filed nil returns till now. What should I do now? Continue filing nil or stop filing? First of all, filing a nil return in case of cancellation, as in my personal view, would be a wrong thing to do, because nil return would be applicable only in those cases where I am liable and continue to register, but only for that month the transactions are not there. So if you have wrongly done it, at least stop from now onwards, and then probably take a call to file the cancellation once it gets enabled in the system. One good question from CA Megha Jalan, whether we can take credit of late fees. The answer is no, we cannot take credit of the late fees paid. Anjali Batreja, if the self-invoice raised on account of purchases under RCM is mandatory to be shown in the under GSTR 1 under the Documents tab, if not shown, what can be done? Please guide. As I said, I have tabulated 4 tables, that is table 3, table 8, table 13, and another table, table 12. These are the 4 tables which are not amendable. So once filed, it is filed forever. Prince Agarwal, a dealer taken a new registration under GST and has not started business yet. Nil business for 3 months but not filed a return now. Getting penalty around 6,800 in the September month. Can he cancel the registration? If cancelled, penalty will be paid or not. So even though you cancel it, you have to discharge the penalty and then only you can cancel it. So this would be the answer for that. Limesh Goyal, is there an option for editing the submitted but not filed? No, there is no option for August and September month enabled till now. As per notification issued on October 13th, question by Swati, exemption from GST registration is provided in case of total turnover is less than 20 lakhs and doing interstate sales. Registration is already taken since dealing with interstate sales. Now should GST collection to be made from October 13th? Okay. So this is a interesting question wherein the notification has come in. After the notification has come, see, the liability to register has been absolved. I mean, he need not register. So what is, he is already registered. I think till cancellation he has to charge the GST because it would be a taxable amount and then take the credit. Existing VAT dealer enrolled GST as regular scheme. Subsequently, he opted for composition scheme. What about the filings of July and August? Question from Subramaniam. Let us understand this concept. What is my status? From when to when? So, depending on my status, when is the composition return would be applicable. When I move to regular return would be applicable. If there are domestic and export activities under the same entity, can ITC of export supplies be set off against liability of domestic outward supply? Alternatively, will credit have to be claimed in RFD1? The answer is, the question is from Ritu Madan. The answer is definitely you can go ahead and claim the credit and set it off towards your domestic supplies. Dhananjay, can the mistakes made in GSTR 1 be corrected in GSTR 3 or else what is the remedy? Correction cannot happen in GSTR 3, it can happen only in the GSTR 1 of the succeeding month. SK Dalmia, in case of one of our clients, GSTR 3B for the month of September was erroneously submitted without claiming credit of ITC. Now GSTR 3B cannot be filed as the portal is showing tax outstanding for payment of due to non-offset. So whatever errors have happened in July 3, in filing 3B, submitting 3B, you have to offset it, pay it, file it, then only corrections can be made in returns. Nikhil Kumar, is GST applicable on sale of truck who is engaged in the business of textiles? Kindly let us know whether this supply would be a supply in the course of furtherance of business. This sale was purchased to save transportation cost. Okay, this asset was purchased to save transportation cost on outward and inward supplies of textiles. If GST would not be leviable on outward supply, will there be RCM applicable to the buyer? Okay. First of all, in this scenario, definitely sale of truck, which is a part of the business assets, definitely gets covered under section 7, that is the supply, read with schedule 2. So at the outset, he should have charged, charged the GST and then transferred. Now question of RCM, see, whenever you procure from registered person, whether he collects or not is a second issue. That doesn't mean that because the registered person has not collected GST, he has to do RCM. This thinking has to be done away with. First thing is we should check if the invoice has the GST of the supplier. If yes, then don't even think of RCM. I want to surrender my registration, but I have filed. Okay, this is a question already considered. Question from Soumya. In case of calculation of interest for late payment, is the date of payment referring to the date on which challan is created and payment made, or the date on which offset? Clearly, offset of the liability is the date when it is considered. Akash Lavar. If July 3B as well as GSTR 1 was filed nil, but there are some sales in July, so while filing GSTR 3B for August, we have considered sales of July also in 3B. Yeah, I think you can proceed with that and you can rectify it the same way. SK Dalmia. Now since RCM under 9.4 has been done away with effect from 13/10/2017, whether RCM shall have to be paid for the month of October from 1st to 12th? Yes, very much yes, because it's a prospective notification. Further, let us take a scenario wherein payment is done after 12th, but received the goods within 12th. So RCM liability for goods arises on receipt of goods. So be careful and try to discharge RCM liability even with respect to those cases. Bhagyashri. Where to show high sale and whether electricity payments are exempt supply or non-GST supply. Electricity is an exempt good under notification 2/2017. So it's an exempt supply. Namita, we wrongly uploaded JSON file of GST. Okay. So Sandeep Biradar, does SEZ need to charge GST on DTA supplies? If so, where we need to report it? GSTR1. As far as SEZ to DTA transactions are concerned, there are two possibilities. One is with the bill of entry and without the bill of entry. But we should be careful while analyzing this because we also need to check the applicability of the SEZ Act here, not only the GST perspective. SEZ Act clearly says that it has to be raised through bill of entry. So ideally it should be raised through a bill of entry and the recipient should report it under table 5 of GSTR 2. On the other hand, if it is not being done, then table 6 of GSTR, not the table 6, the regular outward supplies table has to be considered while filing GSTR 1. Shilpi Rathi, what do we mean by exempt supply in GSTR 3? I think we have dealt with. I think maybe 4 or 5 questions and we will conclude. Yeah. So I am getting penalty for non-filing of GSTR 3B for nil written as well. I know this is a hardship, but this is how it is. In GSTR 2, not shown the CVD payment during import. Okay. I think the question needs to be reconsidered. When does the CVD payment happen? It would be a pre-GST era. But post-GST, there would not be CVD. So you cannot use GSTR 2 to reflect your CVD. You should rather use Tran 1, probably table 7A, to file your CVD related credits. Sandeep Saroji, sir, while filing GSTR 3B at the time of depositing challan, amount was paid in cess column. Okay, whatever mistakes you did in payment, we have discussed.
Let the refund.
Yeah. Devesh Gupta, system allowed late filing of nil 3B for August without depositing of, now late fee is getting. As I said, that you need to consider when it was submitted and when it was filed. Till submission, it will take in the same month. After submission and before filing, the late fee will be auto-populated in the next month. So the last question, probably from CA Ravi Teja. My client has migrated from COT probably to a GST regular. His turnover for the year is less than 20 lakhs. He wants to cancel the registration. Cancellation is not open. Okay, so we have to wait for the cancellation portal and do not file nil returns in his case. So I think it has been wonderful session till now. The questions are
overwhelmingly 400 odd questions.
400 and odd questions. So it was in fact a great feeling and an experience interacting in a different way.
Though it was a mono dialogue, but it appears that it was very well session. And there were many questions of asking that about the PPT. This would be available, and that would be made available on the IDTC website, and you can download it, and it would be there on the YouTube view. So
we thank all the viewers for your participation, and hope you got the benefit out of this. Once again, thank the IDTC committee for organizing this event as well and giving us the opportunity.